Hello, 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 folks. How are we doing today? I hope everyone is having an excellent weekend so far. Hey, Hamdi Gaming, how are you today? Hope you're having an excellent weekend. We're going to get started here in about a minute and 30 seconds. Should have a fun time today. Welcome in, everybody. Today, we're going to have some more fun with TypeScript, and I am looking forward to it, and I hope you all are too. We had a lot of fun last week, so this is going to be great. Hey, Toby. Hello from Sweden. Oh, that's so cool. Hello from the US. Good to hear from you, Toby. Hey, Chris. How's it going today? Hope you're having a good weekend. Hamdi, I'm good. Just finished 100 devs work and did some typing exercises. Oh, okay. So, Hamdi, are you trying to get your typing speed up? Toby. Maybe fun is the wrong word. Alrighty, the timer has clicked down. So let's get into it. Switch my camera here. Hi, everybody. Good to see you all. Toby says, not often you hear TypeScript and fun in the same sentence. Yeah, maybe fun is the wrong word. I have fun talking about it. I hope you all have fun learning about it. I think using it is more it's more of a exercise in control and efficiency and better quality code. Maybe that's the right word. The product is better. Hey, thirsty. Hey, play drums. Oh man, Chris, I hope you're feeling better. Well, I'm glad you're feeling better. Yeah, sinus infections are no joke, man. I hope you went to the doctor and got it treated right away. I made that mistake a few years ago. I had a sinus infection and I didn't get it treated right away, and it actually messed up my sinuses. So I hope that I'm glad you're feeling better, and I hope you were smarter than I was. Coding with strangers. What's up, my friend? I hope you're doing well. Good to see you. How's the streaming going? Hey, Mavi. Good to see you. All right, folks. Hey, that's awesome. I'm glad you're trying to improve your typing. Yeah, no, that's great. More practice means faster typing. Hey, Roz. Yeah, so welcome in, folks. This will be our second stream on working with TypeScript. Last week, so last Sunday, we went over a lot of the fundamentals of TypeScript, what it is, why it might be a good idea for your project, especially when working with a team. We went over some of the basic TypeScript types, what they mean, how to use them, how to set up a function, how to set up variables using TypeScript, how to set up a function using TypeScript, how to, I don't know, set up objects using TypeScript, how to declare custom types, all these wonderful things. So if you have never seen TypeScript before in your life, and you'd like a very thorough introduction to it, you can always watch last weekend's stream, which is available on my Twitch channel. All you got to do is go to my channel, go to the videos, and there it is for you. You can watch it there. Or if you want, you can just dive right in today with us. We are going to start with a brief review of some of the things we talked about last week. It's not going to be as in depth as last week, where we spent all 3 hours on it. But we are going to do a bit of review first, kind of refresh our memory on what TypeScript is, and some of the basic types where you can find the docs, all those types of things. So yeah, we'll start with a review, and then we'll dive into actually trying to make a project using TypeScript and seeing how we can start with TypeScript and end up with a working project. Hey, third decade, happy Sunday to you as well. Hey, Hassler, my weekend was good, thank you. Yeah. Madeline says diving right in. Absolutely, nothing wrong with that. Hey, Lajor. All right, so as I mentioned, we're going to start off with a review. Oh, but before we do that, uh, just a touch of housekeeping. So I've had some folks ask me lately, they don't know when I'm streaming. They don't know, what the topic's going to be. They don't know what that is. So just in FYI, we've had a lot of new followers lately, and now a lot of new folks tuning in. Where you can find my announcements about my stream schedule and what I'm going to be talking about, the best place to find that is on my Twitter. So exclamation point Twitter in chat will give you, my Twitter handle, which is really just Mayan Wolf, so it's not that hard. But if you want to give me a follow on Twitter, you'll see my posts where I post like clockwork. The day of, every Sunday, I'll post whether or not I'm streaming, what the topic is, and any relevant links or anything like that. So feel free to follow me on Twitter if you want some heads up on the topics. Also, if you are on the 100 Devs Discord, there is, some of you may not know about this, but there is a stream team channel where I post the same thing. I'll post, if you don't want to follow me on Twitter, that's perfectly fine. But if you still want to be notified about what I'm going to be streaming about, and you're on the 100 Devs Discord, you can go to, I'll put this over a little bit. You can go to the stream team channel, which is right here. This is where both Rufio and I post about our streams. And so if you want to be notified about what we're going to be talking about, feel free to follow this channel. You can turn on notifications by right clicking on it and choosing notification settings. So if you want to know what Rufio and I are going to be streaming about, this is where you can go and yeah, get another heads up. So Lotjar, if you if you don't have any social media, but you happen to be on the 100 Devs Discord and you can find it there, those are the two places where I do those announcements. Mommy says, cat news? No, nothing yet. I don't have any new foster kittens yet. It's still a little early in the season. They haven't started reproducing yet. More cat news. Hey, Scotty. All right, so just FYI, that's where you can, if you want to, that's where you can get notified about what I'm going to be talking about, those two places. So I hope that's helpful. All right, let's talk about TypeScript. So TypeScript, as the official website says, TypeScript is JavaScript with syntax for types. So basically it's just JavaScript, but it's using strict typing to make our code a little bit less error prone. TypeScript does a lot of things for us. So basically, if you declare a variable, you have to set a type for it. So if I declare a variable called grade, I have to set that variable to a particular type. And then after I do so, every subsequent use or reassignment of that variable is going to be expected to have that correct type. So if I declare something as a number, every time I put something into that variable or do an operation on that variable, it's going to have to be numeric. So grade equals 85 is acceptable, whereas grade equals B is not, because B is a string. So let's look at some examples of TypeScript types. Let's see, get this right. All right, there we go. So this is an example. First off, this is just an example of a plain JavaScript function, right? So in this function, what we're doing is we are calculating a grade percentage based on a student's grade divided by the total possible value for a test. So that'll just tell you how well the student did on the test. And it just, calculates a percentage and then returns it. However, there's a problem with this function. Can anybody spot the potential issue with this function based on maybe what I'm passing into it and what the potential issues could be? Right now, if I execute this function, it's actually going to return just fine. But what's a potential issue with this function? Thank you for the follow, Mickey Dev. Yeah, exactly. So I'm passing into this the variable called grade, right? And grade is actually a string. However, JavaScript being JavaScript, JavaScript is loosey goosey, right? And it doesn't care. So if I execute this right now, if I say node example JS and I execute this, right, it's going to give me a valid answer. However, let's say that I change grade to A because that's a string. You know, we're all it's all strings here. I save it and I run this again. Uh-oh. This student got NaN percentage on the test. NaN, of course, being not a number. So JavaScript can't do that calculation. However, at no point did this function error out. At no point did it tell me, did it alert me that I might be using a variable that isn't ideal for the type of calculation I'm trying to do. Oh, thank you for the follow, Domes. So instead, a better way to do this, and why is this a problem? Well, because it's not always going to be just you working with code, right? You might be working on a team of 10 or 12 people. And if you're not careful, you know, Larry, your coworker, might end up changing some values or using the wrong variable and trying to pass it into your function. And it's not Larry's fault. He didn't, he saw that, when he ran tests on it and passed in 85 into this, into your function, it calculated just fine. It's all good, right? Okay, no problem. I can do that. But what he didn't know is that this is actually a string. And so when you pass in a string value that isn't something JavaScript can convert, then you end up producing invalid answers. And so working with teams, it's better to be more strict if you can. And you want something that's going to flag your code and make sure that you aren't trying to pass in invalid values. Madeline says, so is TypeScript only really going to be useful for sites that take in input from the user? No. The nice thing about TypeScript is that it also corrects you as you're actually writing your code. And I'm sure we'll see examples of this as we're building our project today because I make lots of spelling errors. And so at its very basic level, TypeScript is also very good at correcting your spelling. It's constantly checking while you're writing your code. It's basically a dev tool. And it's making sure, are you making any spelling errors? Are you making any syntax errors? Are you keeping types consistent as you use them? Exactly. And so I know all of us at some point have probably launched a project, and as you were typing, everything looked fine, and then you try to run it and you're getting errors back from your server, and by this time you're 6 files deep and you're like, I have no idea where the problem is. So you're looking through each of your you're manually following your routes, you're tracing through your modules and your controllers, and you're trying to figure out where the problem is. And then finally you find out that you had a spelling error that JavaScript didn't catch because it doesn't really care. And it takes you half an hour. Well, TypeScript does care, and it's going to catch it right away, and it's going to highlight your file in red. It's going to throw errors in the problems tab of your terminal, and it's going to tell you exactly where the problem is. And so that's just one of the advantages of TypeScript. So as an example, this is how we might take this JavaScript function and convert it into, let's see, do I have, here we go, into TypeScript. So here's this example in TypeScript. So the first thing I do when I declare my variables is I set their types. So I immediately declare grade and set it to a type of string. Now, can you all see that? I hope that's big enough for you. I apologize. I'll make that bigger. So grade is immediately declared and set to a type of string. Grade 2, which is the variable we actually want to be using, is set to number. test total is also set to number. So now when I do this function where I'm doing a mathematical calculation, remember we're doing division here, TypeScript is going to make darn sure that if you're trying to do math, you are passing in two numbers to do math on. So watch what happens when I try to pass in grade, which is a string, into my function. It's immediately flagged. It says, hey, an argument of type string is not assignable to this number type. You can't do that. It's not allowed. And if somehow it did get into the function, it would also flag it here. It would flag it here. It would flag it everywhere. And it does not want you to use something that is not allowed. So that's just one of the advantages there. It's constantly checking. Now, let's say I make I make a spelling error. It's also going to catch that immediately. So not only is it going to give it a squiggly line here, it's going to flag it on the problems. Yeah, it's going to flag it on the problems tab of your terminal. I don't know if you've ever used this tab before, but with TypeScript, it immediately tells you exactly what file has the problem, or files, multiple. If multiple have a problem, it's going to tell you by file what the problems are, where they are, line 6, column 33, and in plain text, exactly what the issue is. So very, very, very robust checking. And so you might say, okay, this is great, but this is TypeScript and it's not JavaScript, right? I mean, I run things in JavaScript. I've always built things in JavaScript. But the cool thing is that, let me get rid of these issues here. Boop, 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 boop. Okay. The cool thing is that TypeScript is built to be transpiled into JavaScript. So once we're at a point where we're happy with our TypeScript, all we need to do is run the command tsc and then the name of our file, and then that is immediately transpiled into JavaScript. And if we look at this is the same function that we already wrote. So we've got our variable declarations, got our function, console log, blah, blah. And here it is again, except all those type declarations are gone, and it's just plain old JavaScript. So it's just a quick transpile, or transpile, is basically just, it's turning it from TypeScript into JavaScript. So it's easy as that to convert your TypeScript into JavaScript, and then you can, run node commands on it just like you normally would. So I can run node, see, what is this called? Node tsexample.js. And there we go. So how do I have my TS compiled to ES6? var makes me nervous. Oh, so you can see that this compiled to ES6. It's using the standard syntax. Now you might say, okay, how did you do that? Because if you have just installed TypeScript and you're trying to just compile your TypeScript straight to JavaScript, you might see that it actually starts to try to use old keywords such as var. And you're like, yuck, yeah, I don't like var. I want to use let and const. I want to use modern syntax. In order to do that, you will need a tsconfig file. And I know I'm going kind of fast here, but these are all things that we went to, if you really want to know how to do this by hand, go back to last week's video and we walk through it real slow. But in order to get rid of those var keywords, you want to have your tsconfig file enabled in your folder, and you'll have your target set to ES 2016 or higher. When you set that target, then it will start using the modern keywords. Yeah, you'll have your tsconfig file. And so if you want to enable a tsconfig file manually in your project, you can just do tsc --init. There you go. I just typed it in chat. If you're using npx, of course, it would be, if you have TypeScript installed as a dev dependency, it would be npx tsc --init. like that. There you go. So that is how you can get rid of that out-of-date JavaScript syntax and get everything up to the more modern way of writing variables, writing functions, using arrow functions and that kind of thing. So hopefully that's helpful. All right. So let's talk about types a little bit. Let's review some types. Oh, so before I move on, any questions on this? Again, I know I went a little fast there, but if you really want to deep dive on how to manually set up a TypeScript project, check out last week's stream. We spend a good 3 hours just going through it real slow and setting up a manual project. Today we're going to be using what's called a bundler, which is going to help us set up our TypeScript project automatically, so we won't have to do these manual processes. But it is still good to know how to do them. If you don't want to use a bundler, or if you just want to build a little, off the cuff type project. Yeah, we're going to be setting up our project from scratch, Madeline, but we are going to be using a bundler, which is going to help us. Yeah. Thank you for the follows, folks. Wow, so many follows. Thank you, Satan's Workshop, Motsari, and Spinlock. Thank you for the follows. Also, thank you for everybody who followed in between streams. There's a ton of you. Thank you. Oh, we got a stretch there? Okay. Quick stretch. Ooh. Okay. So let's talk about TypeScript types. So let me find. Oh, it's up here. Sorry. So I had ChatGPT help me out a little bit and summarize the stuff that we talked about last week. So all these files here, we went through some really detailed examples of a ton of different TypeScript types in each of these files here. But I had ChatGPT generate me a one summary cheat sheet of common TypeScript types and how to use them. So we're going to go over that. Make this bigger. All right, so let's go over a few common TypeScript types in a one-page cheat sheet here. So Latjor, it just might not be reading your tsconfig file. I would suggest maybe looking at the docs and Googling a little bit to see why it's not pulling in your tsconfig. You want to make sure that you have your tsconfig in the same folder as your TypeScript files. And yeah, there could be a variety of causes for that, but that is what you need in order to control the syntax of how your JavaScript is being compiled. Yeah. Okay, so let's look at some TypeScript types. So first off, let's look at some basic types such as number. So here we have a simple function that returns a number. So this function is called add, and it takes in two parameters, A and B, right? And what we're doing here is we're specifying that each of these parameters needs to be a number. So this function will only accept, if I were to call this function, it will only accept me trying to pass in two numbers. If I try to pass in a string, so let's just call it real quick. Let's see, let me try to pass in, 2 and 3. Okay, that works just fine. No problems, no errors. Now, if I try to pass in, let's say, a Boolean, it immediately flags it and it says, hey, that's not valid. If you're calling this function, that is not a valid thing for you to try to pass in. But this is. So anything other than a number is not valid. I could try to pass in, an empty array, an empty string, anything I want, and it's going to flag it each and every single time. So very helpful. And obviously for a simple function, you're like, why does this matter, right? What's the big deal? But if you're talking about complex functions with lots of parameters, or if you're talking about functions that are being called by other functions and parameters are being passed through, things can get real confusing real fast as to what goes where. So that's why that sort of thing can be helpful. Thank you for the follow, Famous Blue Frog, and Ilkara Hanil. Sorry if I said that wrong. Okay, So here we're specifying what type of things can be passed into the function. Now, does anybody remember what we're doing here? So this is after the parameters, where we're setting the parameters that get passed in. What's happening here? Does anybody remember? Yeah, Madeline and Juxtapose. You're both right. Juxtapose coming in hot with that first time chat. I love it. Nice. I love it. My first time chatters are always so good. Y'all just come in with like the wisdom, the wisdom bombs coming right in. I love it. So yes, this is the return. This is the type of return that this function is expected to produce. So watch what happens if instead of a mathematical operation, I try to force this function to return, say, a Boolean. Uh-oh, incorrect. It's immediately flagged. And it says, Boolean is not assignable to type number. So we can monitor both what goes into the function and what comes out. And that can be vital when you have maybe very large functions, or like we said before, you have functions that are calling other functions and getting something back from those functions, and then maybe returning the result of that second function. So when you start nesting or getting a bunch of inputs from other places that go into your function, you want to be able to control both what goes in and what comes out, and that's what we're doing here. So it's enforcing both the inputs and the outputs. And here we're in this section, in this second function, we're doing something similar, taking in a string and then a number, and then we're returning a Boolean. So again, we're seeing a few additional types here. We've got numbers, we've got strings, and we've got Booleans. And for those of you who may be familiar with other languages, you might be wondering, can we, how many, what are the types of numbers can we declare? Well, JavaScript isn't as maybe robust in the numeric declarations as some other languages. So you're really kind of stuck with like numbers, but for the most part, that'll be fine. JavaScript has some limitations there. Madeline says, you always have to specify the output. What is best practice? So, I mean, it really depends. Your functions might not always have a specified return type. Your function could be, it really depends on what the function is for. You don't have to do anything necessarily. If I don't specify a return, it just won't be checking that. So I can write my function like this with no return specification. It's still, you notice that if I hover over my function name here, it still tells me it's returning a Boolean, because TypeScript is able to do a type inference. So type inference is when TypeScript infers or guesses what type is going to be returned by a particular operation. And so it can tell that what's going to be returned here is a Boolean, and so it auto assigns. And so it's pretty smart. It can do a lot of that sort of thing. However, that's not always what you want. You might say, well, why don't we just always use type inference? But wherever possible, you probably do want to specify where it matters. You're going to want to specify specific types. So for the sake of others who are using your code, right? You're going to want to be strict about, hey, this is what's happening. This is what's supposed to come out of this. Yeah. Kara says, I love strong type languages, and some people do. I work with a very strict language for my day job. I am a SQL developer. And when you're setting up SQL, it's strict as heck. For our numeric types, we have to specify, we have to specify string lengths. We have to specify both for like decimal values, we have to specify the lengths on both sides of the decimal point. So it's a decimal, and then we have to specify the length on the left side of the point and the length on the right side of the point. And so, there's languages have all different levels of strictness when it comes to typing. JavaScript is not. So TypeScript is just a way to apply a few rules and guardrails to typing in JavaScript. Yeah, and Mavi mentions too, you can set up your config file to even yell at you if you forget to set a type for your, you know, for your variable or for your functions or whatever. You can actually have it yell at you if you forget to do that. And in the tsconfig file has a ton of different settings. I would recommend looking in the at the official JavaScript, or sorry, the official TypeScript website for information on what each of those are and how you can configure them, because there's a crap ton of configuration you can do. The bundler we're going to use today is going to have just a bunch of configurations set by default, and so we're probably just going to use those. But there's a lot more that you can tinker with if you would like to. Yeah. Okay. So next we have an interface. What you're going to hear about is today is uh, a little bit is interfaces and types. As TypeScript has matured, interfaces and types have become more and more similar. So we're actually not going to use interfaces today. However, I think you'll probably see those used a lot with classes. We're not going to be using any classes today, but interfaces and types are kind of ways that you can kind of gather a bunch of different individual declarations together if you want to, and then reuse that interface or that type multiple times. You'll often find them kind of used interchangeably. We're going to be using a type today, so you'll just remember. Just remember that we have this additional keyword of interface here. We might use it in a future project. So arrays, if we want to declare an array, we can do so. We can set an array to a specific type. So you'll notice that the declaration is very similar to how we would declare, let's see, if I were to just declare a regular variable, right, I could say const num1, and I would set that to number equals 1. So that's how I would declare just a regular variable with a number type. However, if I want to declare an array, I just add little brackets to the end. And now this variable is expecting to always contain an array of numbers. If I try to add a Boolean to that, it's not going to like it. It's like that. If I try to add a string, it's not going to like it either. If I try to add another array inside of it, or an object, or whatever, it's not going to like it. You get the idea. It's enforcing type for the entire array. Thank you for the follow. You got sponged. And we can also do the same thing for objects. I can declare an object called person with a number of various types inside of it. Hey, Ryan. And another note about array. I can also, have string arrays. I can have object arrays. Anything that I would normally put into an array, I can declare it. I think we'll see another example of that a little farther down. Yeah, actually, I have another example I'll use in a little bit. Now, any questions on like the standard types? So strings, numbers, booleans, all things we've seen before. Nothing new or unusual really at this point as far as basic types go. So any questions there? Look at me, I forgot my hydration. This is normally the part where I would like stop and take a drink, and like I have no hydration. All right. Yeah, so Kara, you can also declare arrays, I believe, as like, what is it? Yeah, I think that's like older syntax, but let's see, is it something like that? Maybe that's wrong. That's not right. Or is it array like this? Oh, yeah, it's like that. That's right. So you can also declare arrays this way. But I think it's a little bit easier to remember doing it like this, because that's just, that looks like an array, right? Although we will see the alligator syntax a little bit later on today. Oh, thanks for the hydrate, Ryan. When you just hear me talk, I don't have any hydrates, and I got no hydration here. Why you got to rub it in, man? Come on. I'm kidding. Oh, thank you for the follow, tap tap man. Okay, so not hearing any questions there, but feel free to ask questions at any point. I'm happy to answer. I do like to pause occasionally if anybody does have questions. Azurity says in Java you can declare it like that with the alligators. And the T, I believe, means it's generic and therefore works with any type of objects. Yeah, so there is an any type that exists in TypeScript as well. And what any essentially means is that it's not going to check for anything. It's just going to be like, yeah, whatever. It's going to act like standard JavaScript where pretty much anything goes and it's not going to be concerned. It's not recommended that you use any type. Um, it's recommended that you make use of the features of TypeScript and, actually set types. But yes, that type, there is a type any in TypeScript, and even the official documentation says, please don't use it. All right, so next up we have a type which is probably unfamiliar to folks that have been using JavaScript. So we have a tuple. This is called a tuple, which is fun to say. And what it does is it enforces both type and order. So, for example, here we have an array which is of type string followed by type number. So then if I try to set tuple to no, let's see, we'll set it to 1, 2, 3, and then hello. Oh, it's a const. Sorry. There we go. It's going to flag that because it's expecting a specific order. It says type number is not assignable to type string, and then type string is not assignable to type number. So this could be useful for you when you need things to be in a certain order in an array. So maybe you're expecting account information. So this could be something. So a lot of the data that I work with on a daily basis for my day job is very generic in the way it's stored. So for example, I might have a table that has 100 columns in it, and all of those columns contain financial information, different financial values, 100 columns. And maybe those values are, interspersed with descriptions of what those values are. So you have like a description, and then you have the value, and then you have a description, and then you have a value, description, value, blah, blah, blah. And those need to be in that specific order to be pulled into our various automated processing programs. If things get out of order, if, for example, we get two financial values next to each other somehow, that's going to wreak havoc because the program is expecting things to be in a certain order. And so in that case, a tuple would be helpful because it's enforcing that, hey, I'm expecting a string first, followed by a number. This is the wrong order. This is not right. Something is wrong. So that's an example of why that might be useful when you're working with large amounts of data that have to be in a certain order in order to be processed correctly. All right. So that's a tuple. Next up, Madeline says, so sorry, a tuple is just an array with different types of types. Well, specifically, it's types in a certain order. So order matters here. You can have an array with multiple types of values in it, and I'll show you that in just a little bit. You can have arrays with strings and numbers and booleans all inside of them in any order. That is something you can also do. A tuple is enforcing order. Yeah. Third Decade says, take the small amount of time to set types to save headaches down the road. Absolutely. Yep. Save troubleshooting, save headaches. Yeah. I'll show you the unordered type of array in just a minute. So next up, we have what's called enums. Now, you may have seen enums when you've worked with mongoose schemas in MongoDB. You may or may not have seen those, but that's a valid type when you're working with mongoose schemas in MongoDB. You can set enums as a type. Essentially, what enums are is just a group of values, a group of specific values that you can choose from. So if you think about like a form in HTML, right? An HTML form, and you have a drop down. You click on the drop down, it gives you a certain list of values to choose from, and oftentimes you're not allowed to make your own, right? Um, and that can be very important, right? To enforce specific values. Sometimes you want things to be in a certain status, or you want people to say, I don't know, choose their state, right? Choose their, like if you're, they select the United States for their country, then you want to give them a list of states to choose from. They can't, you know, they can't select, like make up their own states like Michiana or whatever. They have to choose from a specific list, and so that's what you can do by setting an enum. And so if you call on that enum, so we can say, let's see, actually I think we call on it later down here. So if I want to console log something from that enum, if I access it here and I say colors dot, it only gives me the specific list to choose from. And if I try to make something else, I start to say yellow, it's going to flag it because it says property yellow does not exist on colors. It's not valid. And in the example we did last week, we did we built an enum of all the months in the year, and then we did some accessing on that enum to calculate whether a month was in summer or not. And so we just added some extra controls to make sure that you were always choosing from an actual month of the year. So enums can be great for, what is my, oh, it's capital. It's also enforcing case here. There we go. Now that's right. Kara says, you have a GitHub repository to share this code. So this particular cheat sheet here is not yet uploaded to GitHub, but I think I will. I'll upload all of these detailed examples of every type, and including this cheat sheet, so that if you're watching this, you can if you're watching like last week's video, you can follow along live. Yeah, I think I will upload this to GitHub. It's not there right now, but if you do want to link to my GitHub with my other projects, you can do !GitHub in chat for a direct link. That's where you'll find this repo as well once I push it. Yeah, Mavi says limited options equals enums. Exactly. Now, we touched on this a little bit earlier. We also have the ability to union multiple types together and use them both. So, for example, I can declare this variable called union type, and using the pipe key, which is that little key on your keyboard that's below the backspace. If you're using an English language keyboard, it's just below the backspace. You can hit the shift key in order to use it. Using the pipe key, we can union multiple types together. So you can see that this variable is initially set to a string, but later on, I can reassign it to a number, no problem. TypeScript isn't yelling at me, because I declared it as a union type, meaning I can use both. So if I try to set it to a Boolean, type Boolean is not assignable to type string union number. So it's not going to let me do that, but it is going to let me assign it to either a string or a number. Now, I could also do a third union here. And now, oops, sorry, that's wrong. There we go. Now, if I try to assign it to a Boolean, it's going to let me, because I declared the variable in that way, unioning three types together. So we can do multiple type unions. Excuse me. We can also do that for arrays. And I think that's probably, where you might see this being used, is, let's see, we'll do this. We'll say let union type array, if I could spell, array, and then I'm going to set that array to be both a string and number array. So I can say string pipe number and then array, and now I can set it to be hello and 1. So now this array accepts both string and number types. So I hope that makes sense. Now, what would happen if instead of putting the union in parentheses like this, let's see what happens if I do it like this. So I've seen this as kind of a common error that people make when they're trying to declare an array. They think, oh, if I want it to be both types, if I want it to have both strings and numbers in it, I need to declare it this way. Well, let's see what happens if I try to write my array in the same way as I did before. Uh-oh, it doesn't like it, because what it's expecting is either an array with all strings or an array with all numbers. So it will accept this string array or this numeric array, but not the combo. So if you want the combo, you need to do this notation. Now it'll work. Okay, hope that makes sense. Because I know most of the times when you make an array, when you build an array, you're going to have more than one type in it, right? You're not just, a lot of the times you aren't going to have single typed arrays because you're getting something back from an API, or, you're just dumping a bunch of data into an array. And we're going to see that a little bit later. We're actually going to make an array that has a bunch of objects in it for our project today. We're going to make an array full of objects. And so we'll get into how to do that in the project itself. Now, the last thing I want to mention here before we actually get into the project is what we call a type alias. So a type alias allows you to make your own custom types. RJ, thank you so much for the follow. It allows you to make your own custom types. So let's say I find myself just declaring a bunch of things and using a bunch of things that could either be a string or a number. Like I'm just using that over and over and over again, repeatedly. And I'm getting real tired of typing string, pipe, number, string, pipe, number, string, pipe, number. It's a little hard, like the pipe key on your keyboard, you got to use your pinky, and it's kind of hard to hit it. You got to use the shift key and pinky. And, I'm moving too fast for that. I ain't got time to use both hands to hit the shift key and the pipe key. So what I can do instead is I can declare a custom type alias, and then I can reference that alias, and it will know that this is what I'm trying to set the type to. So for example, I'm setting a type here called alpha num, and I want this to be equivalent to the string and number union type. So anytime I set something to type alpha num, TypeScript is going to know that what I really mean is string union number. So here, for example, I have declared a new variable called custom type, and I'm setting it to type alpha num. And I initially declare it as 12, but now I'm going to say custom type equal hello, and it's going to allow that because it's type alpha num, and type alpha num is equivalent to string or number. Madeline says, cool, TypeScript seems pretty intuitive. Good. I'm glad it's making sense so far, even with this sort of abbreviated introduction to it. Mavi says, I'm making a type and calling it bad code. Yeah, that's the thing. I can call this type whatever the heck I want if it makes sense to me. And you can also, we're going to see later on in our project today, we're going to see that maybe a little bit better use case for type. Custom type aliases can be very handy when you are repeatedly using a very complex type declaration. So for example, what if a lot of the times when we're getting stuff back from an API, right? Let's say you're accessing an API. A lot of the time what you're getting back is pretty large objects, right? You're getting maybe an array full of objects with a crap ton of key value pairs. And then you're taking those and you're passing them into functions. You're just dumping the whole thing into a function and you're doing stuff to it. Now that would be pretty flippin' annoying to have to, for every single function where you're using that massive object, to have to explicitly declare it as a type in the parameter, right? Every single time you're going to make your functions look really gross. But what you can do instead is just set a type value for that entire object and reference it whenever you need it. And we're gonna practice that today in our project. Logic Fan says nifty. Geekbook says wow. Yeah, it is pretty nifty, isn't it? Geekbook says I just use it. I use just any. Nah, you got to use your custom types, my friend. The documentation even says you shouldn't use any. Be careful with that. But the thing is about TypeScript is that there's nothing stopping you from using any. You can. It's not going to stop you. It's all about freedom of choice, right? And it's not going to fail to compile. Even if you have a bunch of errors in your TypeScript, it's not going to stop you from compiling it and using it. It's just going to yell at you the entire time. Demit says, do you have lazy eye syndrome? I do. Yes, it's a birth defect called strabismus. So I can see just fine, but my eyes look a little funny. Really doesn't hurt me though. Greek Book says, strongly agree. Deadshot says, I love your passion to teach. Thank you. Teaching is fun. Thank you for the follow, Geek Book. Third Decade says, can TypeScript serve as a wrapper for other languages too, or just JavaScript? That is a good question. I think it's really specific to JavaScript. You can definitely look at the docs. The docs are really good. Let me I'll link the docs here in chat if you want to take a look. There you go. Now TypeScript is compatible with things like React. So you can use other frameworks with TypeScript. And TypeScript, you can actually enable TypeScript like built into your React project. So when you start a React project, you can just have it set up from the get-go with TypeScript, which is pretty cool. And yeah, I mean, it's really compatible. It's also I don't know what the correct word is, maintained by Microsoft, because it is open source, but Microsoft is championing it. It's Microsoft is kind of overseeing it, so it's definitely got a lot of support behind it. Kara says, do you think to teach Rust? I don't know Rust. Day by day, I'm a SQL dev, doing back-end work, and then by night, so to speak, and by weekend, I am a JavaScript web dev. Mommy says, yeah, technically any counts as TypeScript. There's a lot of projects. Yeah, there's a lot of projects like that on GitHub where everything is set to type any. A lot of folks do just use TypeScript because it's popular and it's like, oh yeah, I can do that, but they never declare any types, and so why would you even bother? I would say if you're not going to declare types, just use JavaScript. If you're going to declare types, use TypeScript and transpile to JavaScript. Hey, demigod. Oh, thank you, Madeline. All right, so that is a basic review of types, and like you say, that was an excellent suggestion. I will push this to GitHub. So this kind of big, I don't know, set of cheat sheets or whatever, I'll push this to GitHub so folks can reference it. But we are going to be using a different file for our project today. Kara says Microsoft is holding the community up on TypeScript and C#. Yeah, and also GitHub. I mean, really, the GitHub's integration with VS Code is just fantastic. And I mean, Microsoft is, it's a big corporation, but dang, they support some good projects. By night she fights crime. This is just her weekend thing. Man, I gotta sleep sometime. But no, by night I feed foster kittens. This is just my weekend thing. Hassler says, "Are you a Windows or a Mac fan?" So I'm using Windows 11 here. Based on the weird central taskbar. I am a Windows person. I use Windows for work as well. I know a lot of devs use Mac, but personally, I use Windows because I'm a gamer nerd and I like to play video games. So Windows for me. All right. So let's see. What time is it? All right. So what we'll do is I'm going to give you an introduction to a brief introduction to the tools we're going to be using for the project today. It's nothing too crazy. Don't panic. we are going to be using another tool in addition to TypeScript, which is going to help us build our project and get it ready for, maybe an eventual production release. So it's going to be helping us do our development work, and it's going to, uh, when you're ready to deploy to production, it can assist you with that as well. All right, so I'm going to move my window over here a little bit. So what we're going to be using today is a tool called Vite. And what Vite helps us do is it's what's called a bundler. So when you're developing in TypeScript, TypeScript you can't run TypeScript in the browser. So if you try to say run node commands against a TypeScript file, or use live server and go live directly against a TypeScript file, it's not going to work. You have to transpile TypeScript into a language that the browser can read, which is in this case going to be JavaScript. Now, there's a few different ways that you can do that. You can take your TypeScript file and you can use a command. So you can say tsc summary.ts and what that does is it transpiles it into JavaScript manually. You can also, once you've done once you have your tsconfig.json, you can also run a file watcher by doing tsc-sw, and which will kind of work like nodemon and automatically watch for changes to your file. So you can do, if I make a change here, what do I say? Just do this and save. So you didn't see that there, but I believe it did save. Let me just make another change. Should have done. Oh, I'm in my JavaScript file. That's why I didn't see it. Hang on. Need to be in my TypeScript file. Do this. I always do that. I get in the wrong file. All right, save. There we go. So you saw it refresh down there. So it's watching for changes, right? It's watching for changes and it's transpiling again and again and again. But as you get into more complex projects, maybe you get more and more, you have a bunch of nested folders, you have static files. So let's say that, you have a few TypeScript files that you're working on, and then you have, and those are hooked up to, an EJS file, and you also have a couple of static HTML files. You've got some custom images that you want to use on your site, and you've got a really complex folder structure going on. It gets harder and harder to make sure that you are inputting things in the right place, outputting things in the right place, getting everything ready to be deployed properly so you don't lose track of your images, keeping everything in the right folder. And so that's where something like a bundler can really help us. And there's a lot of options out there for bundlers. Vite is just one of them. So I think like Webpack is kind of the OG. And yeah, there's a bunch of them. But today we're just going to use Vite. They all work in a similar way. I think Vite is one of the newer ones that's out there. It's picked up a lot of popularity. And so, I want us to get familiar with popular tools. And so we're going to be using Vite today. But you'll notice if you've ever worked with something like React before, it's going to feel a little bit familiar in the way that we basically just enable it. And it's going to set up a bunch of stuff for us automatically, including our folder structure. And it's going to start our file watcher. It's going to transpile things for us automatically. It's going to handle, configuring it so it's ready to go, and the browser is not going to have any trouble rendering our output. So that's what we're going to be using today. And I think you'll find it's pretty user-friendly to set up. And then once we've set it up, we really don't have to worry about it. So we'll be using Vite and TypeScript today to build a simple app. And we're going to do that after the break. Now, I will say the project we're going to be doing today is based on a tutorial by WebDev Simplified. So if you're not familiar with WebDev Simplified, they do online tutorials similar to Traversy or those other folks who devote a lot of their time to teaching for free online. However, I have made several modifications to this tutorial because despite the fact that it is from 2022, April of 2022, it is already out of date. So that, as is the case with so many web tutorials, they just, as soon as they're out on the web, they are out of date. And so if you do want to watch this tutorial, that is perfectly fine. I like to give credit where credit is due. I will link to it in chat. You are welcome to watch it. However, you will find that WebDev uses a tool called Snowpack to bundle their code, which is, you can still use it today, but it is actually no longer supported. It was an open source tool, which is no longer being supported, and the developers of that tool are actually working on a tool that relies on Vite. So they all stopped. They were like, nope, we're done with Snowpack. We're not supporting it anymore. And they all went to work on a tool that works with Vite. So we've switched to Vite because that seems to be where the environment is coalescing to. Mavi says Webpack takes a while to set up. It's not the most practical. Yes, Mavi, and that went into my decision in what tool I wanted to use. So that's why I chose Vite, because you will find, don't be afraid. It's extremely easy to set up. It takes like 30 seconds and you have everything you need, and it's blindingly fast. So really good. Yeah, WebDev Simplified is pretty great. Yeah, all those folks are so great who give their time and make all those hundreds of tutorials, and so that's why I like to give credit where credit's due. Um, Madeline says, "Don't devs get tired trying to keep up with the rat race of new tools?" Exactly. I will be honest. That's one of the reasons I do enjoy SQL so much, is that SQL's been around since the 1970s. Yeah, there's new features that get released for like Postgres and stuff because Postgres is open source. But like for a lot of the flavors of SQL that are like owned by Microsoft and Oracle, yeah, they're pretty static. You don't got to worry about that. SQL is SQL for the most part. So that's a little bit refreshing sometimes. Tale as old as time, deprecated stuff. Oh yeah, TypeScript. Sorry, Third Decade has suggested a poll, so we're gonna take a break. I will get the poll set up over the break, and then when we come back, I'll start the poll, and y'all can answer Third Decade's question. Thank you for the follow, Lando. All right, so let's go ahead and take our break. I'll get the poll set up over the break, and then when we come back, we'll get our project set up and with Vite, and then we will start writing our TypeScript code, and we'll see how it transpiles into viable JavaScript, and how we can use TypeScript in actual projects to do things like pull in form data and do some real world sort of calculations on it. So, all right, 5-minute timer. Yeah, so Snowpack, and to be clear, if you want to use Snowpack, you can. It still works. But if you look at the official docs for Snowpack, it's no longer, they tell you it's no longer supported. So over time, it will probably start to get out of sync and maybe stop working so well. So you might want to consider switching if you're using Snowpack currently. Yeah, unfortunately, that's the way it goes sometimes. All right, 5 minutes on the clock. Please get up and stretch if you are able to. And I will see you back here in 5, and we'll get started on our project. All right, folks, we've got about a minute left in the break. So please get a drink of water. I know I did. I finally got my hydration set up. Get up and stretch if you haven't already. Pet your cat, pet your dog, pet your significant other with their permission, of course. And then come on back when you're ready. Also, the poll is now running. So at the top of the chat window, you should see the poll that Third Decade requested, asking about your frequency of use of TypeScript in work projects or personal projects. So if you click on that poll at the top of the chat box, you will see the opportunity to vote on how often you use TypeScript in your daily life, if you do at all. Alrighty, I'm going to go ahead and stop the timer before it beeps at us. And I'll get my camera going again here. Hey, Drunk Uncle Grandma, good to see you. All right, welcome back, folks. Please come on back. Let's get started on our project using Vite. All right, and I do believe it's pronounced Vite and not Vite. I'm pretty sure it's Vite, but feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I know that it can be annoying when someone repeatedly pronounces something wrong, so I do believe it's Vite. Thank you for the follow, Mystic. You're right. I believe it's French. Yeah, it could be. Yeah, thinking like vita or life. Like, I don't know what it means, but yeah, I'm thinking it's Vite. All right. So I've got a blank Visual Studio window here, and I've got a folder already set up for my project. Oh, Kidron, coming in with the knowledge bomb. Thank you. First time chatter, all time winner. Kidron says it means fast in French. Aha. That makes so much sense. Thank you, Kidron, because yeah, Vite is marketed as an extremely fast dev tool, so makes a lot of sense. Mittel, you got here just in time for the knowledge bomb, my friend. We learned what Vite means in French. I feel fulfilled. I learned a French word today. All right. Feeling good. Okay. So let's go ahead and get our terminal pulled up. I'm going to switch to Bash because that's what I use, but you can use your favorite, terminal client, whatever you want. So how we enable a Vite project is pretty easy. All we need to do, and I'm assuming too, real quick, I'm assuming that everybody here has Node installed already. So if you don't have Node, if you are not building your own web apps or anything like that yet, you will need to have Node in order to follow along. However, you're welcome to watch if you don't have Node, but I would suggest getting that installed. I think if you want to see if you're not sure whether you have Node installed, I think you can do node-v. Yeah. So if you can run this command successfully and see a version number, you should be able to see whether or not you have Node installed. So if you have Node installed, you can use it. We're going to use npm, the package manager, in order to install Vite. So in order to do that, all we need to do is just say npm create Vite at latest, and then we can just hit enter. All right. And now it's going to ask us to please enter a project name. I'm just going to call this, I'll just call it TS Vite project. Doesn't really matter. And my package name can really be the same. That's perfectly fine. All right. So I've hit enter there, and I've got my project and my package set up. Oh, and let me I'm going to put that command in chat as well. So it's just npm create Vite at latest. There you go. If you want to copy and paste that and follow along. Now, it's giving me a couple of choices here on frameworks. So what we can see here is that I can use Vite with multiple different possible frameworks. So I can use Vite just vanilla. I can use Vite with Vue. I can use Vite with React, Preact, Lit, Svelte, and I'm assuming others. I don't know what's in that list, but I'm sure you can find out in the docs what else is in that list. We're not going to go crazy with it today. We're just going to use vanilla. And now in vanilla, we can select a variant of whether we're working with JavaScript or TypeScript. So you can use this tool in vanilla JavaScript as well. But we are, of course, using TypeScript today. Mittel says, create a Vite project using the latest version. Yeah. I mean, I'm assuming you could probably specify other versions if you wanted to. But we're just using the latest version of Vite. And it's going to create a new project for us. What we're doing here by selecting these options is we are just basically configuring it. So we're configuring our project, and so when it does create it for us, it's going to have all the right settings. It's going to know what language we're using, so it's going to generate the correct type of files for us, all the files that we need for our particular language. So in this case, I'm going to choose TypeScript. And also too, the way I'm navigating around this is I'm just using the arrow keys to navigate up and down. You can see it tells you to use the arrow keys and then the enter button to submit my choice. So I'm going to choose TypeScript. Now it says it's scaffolding the project, so it's getting everything ready, and it says done. And it tells us what to do next. So what we need to do next is run cd tsvite project, which is the folder that I'm creating. So I can just say, all right, cd, which is change directory, right? We're navigating to the directory. If you know your Linux commands, Vite project, enter. Okay, now you can see that I have been moved into that folder, and there it is, right there. And then all I need to do is run npm install, which is going to install a set sort of suite of packages that we'll need for our project. So so normally when we build a project, we have to do npm install and a bunch of different things. This is going to install a bunch of stuff for us automatically. So I'm just going to do, all right, npm. I can type install or just npmi. Either one is fine. And you can see it's installing a bunch of stuff. All right. And then we can do npm run dev to start the sort of the example project. So sort of like with React, you know, it's going to open a sort of example, web window for you to show that the project is actually working. So that's what it can do here. We run the third command, npm run dev. We'll just see what it gives us. All right. And so it tells us where that project is running. It's running in localhost 5173. So I can control click or command click, I assume, in order to open that link. And there we go. Our project is up and running, Vite and TypeScript. You can see that. Vite and TypeScript running in the browser. And you can see we've got an interactive element here. That's just showing us that, the interactivity is working. Things are hooked up correctly. And also, if you click either of these logos, it will take you to the appropriate official documentation or official website for that language. So if I click this, it will take me to the Vite site that we were looking at before. If I click this, it will take me to the official TypeScript website. So if you forget where those are, just start a Vite project and it'll tell you. Thank you for the first try, Ryan. Thank you for the follow, Kodwazabi and Dermich. All right. And Mittel, sorry I didn't do an LS, but we are going to explore what's in our we're going to explore what's in our file structure here in just a second. So now that I have this folder created up here in my navigation, so the poll has completed, and looks like most folks who voted in the poll have not previously used TypeScript. So I'm glad this is an effective introduction for folks. Let's see what those results are. Yeah, a few folks have used it once or twice. A couple folks have used it for work. Nobody uses it all the time. I figure that most folks are probably using it in a work capacity because it's really effective when you're working with a team of developers and you want to make sure that, nobody screws stuff up, right? Because there's a million ways you can screw stuff up when working with a team. One person changes something and everything else gets borked. TypeScript is a great way to mitigate that from happening. All right. So let's see what's in the folder that it has created for us. Yeah, sir. Good to hear from you. Well, I just joined the stream. I use TypeScript all the time. Okay, good to know. Kara says around 7 years ago, I wrote an little MVC framework using TypeScript on Node.js. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, some folks may use it for work, some folks may use it for personal projects, um, and you might not know that folks are using it because they just compile it to JavaScript, and you never know. But yeah, I think the benefits are worth trying to integrate it into your projects if you can. All right, so I'm opening my folder here, and let's see what's inside. So this is all what Vite has generated for us. So we didn't make any of this ourselves, right? I started with a blank folder, and then I just had Vite um, essentially said, hey, Vite, please build this for me. So let's see what's in here. So we can tell that it has run npm init, right? It's run npm init. So we have our package .json file. And if we look in here, we can see what's in here. So we've got all of our basic setup stuff. We've got our name, project name. We've got a few scripts already configured. So when we run npm run dev, it's actually running Vite, which makes sense. We've got a build script. So if we were ready to deploy for production, it would run this. It would run both our TypeScript compiler and a Vite build command. Which will do a lot of things for us automatically. It'll bundle everything up automatically and get it ready for deployment. There's a preview script as well. And then under our dev dependencies, we've got TypeScript being used as a dev dependency, which is really how you should be using TypeScript, right? It's it's a dev dependency to be used in the development process. And we've got Vite. Oh, thank you for the hydrate there, Spinlock. And I actually do have some hydration, so just water. I normally drink tea during these streams, but I didn't have time to boil the water during the break because I'm in the U.S. and we have, low voltage outlets, so my water doesn't boil that quickly. Y'all over there in the UK, they've got those crazy 240 volt outlets and they can boil water like a jet engine. It's great. So if you don't have TypeScript, you can install it globally if you would like. Let me think. I believe if you've initialized Vite, it should install it as a dev dependency for you. But you can install TypeScript globally, but you should see it in your dev dependencies here. And I believe if you don't have it installed globally, it'll install it as a dev dependency for you, so you don't need to install it manually. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, well, if it didn't install, okay. If it didn't install, you can always install it globally, so you can follow along with us here. If you go to the TypeScript docs, the official site, it will tell you how to do that. So you can install it as a dev dependency here. It gives you the script to do so. And then if you want to install it globally, you can just scroll a little farther down the page, and it tells you how to do that. So either way is fine. You can install as a dev dependency or globally. I have it globally installed, which I've found useful so far, but it's really your choice. Madeline says, did you end up getting a new fancy kettle? So I did get a new kettle for Christmas. It is red, which is my favorite color. I love it. It's not the fancy one, but I am still planning on getting the fancy one with all the digital stuff. But this one is a classic kettle, but it is red. So that's 95% of what I wanted anyway. Mattel says, haha, more EMF means quicker tea to mouth. Absolutely. Yasu says, most people coming from strongly typed languages use TypeScript. Yeah, if you're familiar with types already, it's a pretty easy transition, and it's a little less scary than the loosey-goosiness of JavaScript, right? It's essentially all the benefits of JavaScript with none of the uh, what is it? What's the word I'm thinking of? None of the craziness that comes with not having strictly declared variables. Ladro says I have a nice green one. Yeah, no electronics. Yeah, that's fair. Okay, so we've got our package.json with our dependencies. And then we also, notice here, we also have our tsconfig. So what our tsconfig is doing here, if you recall, is that's what TypeScript uses to know how to both check our code while we're writing it and also how to transpile it into JavaScript. So it's set a bunch of things by default for us here. We can change these settings if we want to. I'm probably not going to do that, but you can look up what these are and change them if you would like. We've got things like no unused parameters, so if I declare a parameter it has to be used. No implicit returns, and these are just specifying what's going to be checked by TypeScript while we're typing it. And we've also got our target value here, so where we define how our code it sets the, so if I hover over it here, it says it sets the JavaScript language version for the compiled JavaScript and any compatible library declarations. So I could set it to ES 2016 or 2021. This is set to ES Next, which is fine. And so yeah, these are just like, this is just basically our settings file, our config file for TypeScript. Yeah, Mattel. So installing TypeScript globally doesn't mean that you have to use it. So I can still do vanilla JavaScript projects without using TypeScript, even though I have it installed globally. It's not going to hurt anything. I can still do vanilla JavaScript all I want. I can call on TypeScript at any point to build a config file and bring it into my project. Yeah. Yeah, it'll just be available going forward on any node project that you're doing. Like George says, this tsconfig file is much easier to read. Yeah, so you notice this config file, the default config file that is generated just when you're just using TypeScript and you do that tsc dash dash init, it's going to be really wordy with a crap ton of comments, and it's like 3,000 lines long or something. It's redonkulous. This one is very compact and really only has the basics that you need. You could add additional settings to this if you wanted to, but we're not really going to touch this. Yeah. One thing I do want to make note of though here. Yeah, and that's true. So Yasser brings up a good point too. So tsconfig really only compiles the TypeScript to JavaScript, and then what Vite build does is make it so that JavaScript can actually work in the browser. Exactly. Yeah. So what Vite does, so you can still run TypeScript in the browser without using a bundler like Vite. We actually did that last week. So if you want to see us doing that last week, what we did is we wrote TypeScript, we transpiled it into JavaScript, and then we just use live server to run it in the browser. So classic localhost running it in the browser. But when you start to get into more complex projects with multiple static files, multiple images, and also import and export statements, you're going to start to have issues with the browser not being able to read your import exports. They aren't compatible with the way that the browser decodes things, and so a bundler just makes it easier to build those sort of multifaceted, complex projects. And it automatically sets up your entire structure, which is pretty nice. All right, so we have our config, we have our package.json already set up. We've got our index.html already set up with, our basic format for our HTML. We've got our git ignore with a bunch of stuff in it. It's already set up to git ignore appropriate things. Now let's look inside of our source folder here. So similar to React, it's already dumped a bunch of stuff in there. We won't need a lot of this, but it has its little, our little splash page here is already set up. What it is showing us is how we can have multiple files. We can import export those files, and then have it all be bundled up together and display in the browser. So inside our source file is where we're going to be writing our TypeScript. And we can see we've got our style.css. We've got a logo here. And then we've also got this Vite dot slash env. And this is where we can set up, additional like variables and things. We're not going to use this, but I'm just going to leave it in there. You can check the docs for the types of things you can put in this file, but we're just going to kind of ignore it for now. So we're going to be putting our code inside the main.ts file. But let's finish going over the rest of the folders first, and then we'll come back and we'll clean some of this up a little bit. Ironclad says, I'll have to check this out once I learn TS properly. So Ironclad, if you want a truly bare bones from zero introduction to TypeScript, check out my stream from last week, because that's what we did. We started from nothing and we spent a good 3 hours going over the basics of what TypeScript is and why you might want to use it, and then basic types and how to use them. So I would highly suggest checking out last week's stream. Bet. I'm glad. Oh, thank you, Lajor. All right. So that's what's in the source folder. And it's kind of similar to React, right? You have things in a source folder and then it goes to a, destination or whatever. And we also have our public folder here. So this is where you would put, static pages or static images, other things like that. So public folder. Then we also have our node modules folder, which has all the usual junk in it. Emred, thank you for the follow. Okay, now let's clean this up a little bit. So I'm going to make my window here big for a minute, and I'm going to get rid of the thing in the public folder here. We don't need this. I'm also going to get rid of this counter.ts. And I can leave the style.css. That's fine. We aren't really going to be using it anyway. I can get rid of this SVG, and I think that's good. Yeah, I think we can. I think this is decent enough. The structure is not too complicated, so hopefully it won't be too confusing. But yeah, we can kind of get rid of some of the chaff and just set up the basics of our project. Okay, so let's go ahead and configure our HTML. So really what we're going to be doing today is we're going to kind of be doing like the classic to-do list. We've done that a few times. It's got a pretty standard format. All we're going to be doing is setting up an input form. And then below that, we're going to have, I think below that, we'll just have a little place where we can have a list of items. So as we add items to our to-do list, those items should appear below our input box and list. And we're going to have some, these items will have checkboxes, and you can check them off as they're completed and then add new tasks. So input form with a list below, pretty standard at this point. Oh, thank you, Ironclad. Yeah, I'm actually a SQL dev. I've been a SQL dev for much longer than I've been doing web dev. So started out in SQL and have branched out into web dev as well. Yeah, because it's fun, right? All this stuff is fun. Mommy says added no implicit any and force consistent casting and file names only because I like screams. Yeah, you can add additional settings to that config to basically make it yell at you anytime you forget to declare a type, or just be more strict. That's absolutely fine. Started out with SQL, now we're here. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to pull up my notes in my other screen. Give me just one moment, because I just realized I didn't have the HTML pulled up, so kind of need that. Come on. There we go. I don't have this stuff memorized, folks. Never think that I have this memorized. I have notes. Some folks might be able to do this stuff on the fly. I cannot. I have notes. All right. So in our HTML, it's going to be very simple. First off, I'm just going to make a little bit of. I'm gonna quote unquote cheat a little bit. We're just going to add a little bit of styling inside of. We're just going to add a little bit of styling inside of our little head here of our HTML, because we're really only going to have like one line of style. So going to cheat just a tad. forgive me, baddie's writing bad code, right? I'm going to use style tags here, and I'm just going to drop in a little bit of styling for our list that we're going to have. So we're going to have a class called list, and I'm just going to say list style because I don't want any bullet points on my list. So list style is going to be none and no padding. That's all we're going to do. Oops, padding 0. Okay. Memorization is for elephants. I learned notes stack in Google. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with having notes, right? And knowing how to Google effectively is important. Best buddies. Ironclad says, ever since studying algorithms, I see that word as you see memorization as memoization. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Now our code here in our body is going to be very, very simple. Yeah, I'll just leave, let's see, I'll leave that script there. That's fine. All right. So inside of our body, we're really only just going to have a simple form. So form, and we don't even need an action here. We're going to have no action because we're going to be, all of our to-do items are going to be storing in local storage. So you may or may not be familiar with that, but essentially it means that we don't need to have like an official database backend. We're just going to be storing all that data locally so that when we refresh the page, it is stored. Our browser is capturing that and holding on to it, but we don't need to have an official backend. If I was making this into a real app, I would probably want some kind of an official database storage, but we're not doing that today. It's not so much about the what database we're using or how we're storing that data. It's more about how do we use TypeScript to build this. So input type is going to be text. Oh, sorry. Our form is going to have an ID of new task form, and our input type is going to be text, and the ID of this is going to be new task. I keep putting my quotation marks in the wrong place. New task title. And so really just one input box, and then we're going to add our classic submit button to the form. So button, we're going to have the type be submit. Really, in this case, since we're not actually submitting the form, it could really be whatever we want. But we're going to use a submit button just to practice something. When we get into the JavaScript, we're going to practice how we can make it so when we click on the submit button, we don't reload the page. So what we're going to do is we're going to learn how we can suppress the default action of submit and have it just not not submit. Oh, good. Glad you figured it out, Madeline. Okay, so that's really, and then the last thing is we actually want our list. So I'm going to have a UL down here. And that UL is just going to have an ID of list. If I could ever get my quotation marks in the right place, I think I would be very happy. All right. So you'll notice I'm missing something here, right? Like we're done. But okay, I've set up this list here, but I don't have any, like there's nothing in it, right? If I want to add items, I need LIs. Well, our code is going to be adding those LIs for us. So by default, this list will be empty. However, if there's anything in storage, that will be read and added to the list. And then also as we create new items, those will be added to the list as LIs. And so we're going to learn how to use TypeScript to do that. All right, I think that's everything for our HTML. So that was easy. Before we get away from this, excuse me, and yeah, we could probably also get rid of this link up here in the header, but it's not going to hurt anything, I don't think. But I think you could also probably just get rid of that. All right. Now you notice it's throwing a bunch of errors down here. It's freaking out, and that's totally fine. It's trying to import some stuff that doesn't exist. We're going to clean that up here in just a minute. So our HTML is done. So let's move on to our main.ts. Are you going to ask about the errors? Yeah, it's okay. Basically, the reason it's erroring out is because it's still trying to generate all this. So we can just get rid of it. We're going to clear out this file. And as soon as I do that, all of the errors go away. It was basically just trying to read some of the files that we deleted, like that logo and stuff like that. And as soon as I do that, all good. Now it's still erroring out. But we're going to fix that too in a minute. It just doesn't like that we don't have any import statements here. It's expecting us to be importing stuff, other things, dependencies, and all that. And we're gonna rectify that in just a minute. All right. So our HTML is done. Now let's start in on our actual TypeScript, what we all came here for. So first thing I want to do is, when I'm saving things to local storage, well, when I'm saving things anywhere, when I'm saving things to a database, when I'm saving things to local storage, when I am, doing things with, like, anywhere where I have a long list of a lot of items and I want to store those items in a place. What's one thing that I always want to add whenever I store something in a database? What's one thing that every item in that database has to have, no matter what type of an item it is? Whether it's I don't know, whether it's user information or a recipe or, information about a movie. What's something that's common to every single item that you store inside of, say, a MongoDB database? What's always there? Yeah, we got more first time chatters coming in hot with the right answers. Good job, y'all. Yeah. So yeah, it's some kind of an ID that allows you to uniquely identify that database item, right? So generally, when we're storing things in MongoDB, that item is auto-generated. However, that's not always the case, especially with local storage. Really, I mean, local storage doesn't much care what you dump in there. But we're going to use an ID generator to auto-generate a unique ID for each item that we're storing in our local storage. That's really not going to matter for this project, but I think it's still good practice to do. So we're going to install a dependency in order to help us do that. And then we're going to import that dependency into our project. So we're going to use a dependency called UUID. And there's several different ways that you can, auto-generate these unique IDs and stuff like that. UUID is just one of them. We're going to use that. So I'm going to open a new terminal, and I could do that by just opening a new git bash terminal here. I know that's behind my head, but really I'm just went down to my terminal. I clicked on the down arrow next to the little plus sign. Actually, I can make this taller. Do this, down arrow, and then I'm choosing git bash. And so now my server is still running, or my project is still running on the other terminal, but I can type things in this terminal without killing my project. So in this second terminal, I'm just going to type, first off, I'm going to make sure if you'll notice, I made this mistake earlier today. Notice what folder I'm in right now. I'm in TS Vite project, but my folder is actually one farther down. I did name these the same name, which is probably not the best idea, but I need to go down one more folder. So I'm going to say cd TS Vite project. So you just make sure to cd into the actual folder where you're currently located. And then we're going to do our npm I UUID to install our ID generator. All right. And I've installed that. Now, if I go into my package.json, I should see it. Maybe. Here we go. Dependencies right here. UUID has been installed. Thank you for the follow, Enadem and Phelan. UUID is now installed, so we'll be able to use it. So in my main.ts file, I can go ahead and import the dependency I just installed. So I'm going to say import, and I'll paste this into chat so you don't have to figure it out. V4 as UUID V4. Don't have to worry about too much, what this means. We're just making it so we can pull in what we need in order to use it. Now you'll notice that this gets underlined in yellow. It just says that, hey, this has been declared, but it's never read, and that's okay. We're going to read it in just a minute. TypeScript is just jumping the gun. So our project is running, no errors. This has been underlined, but we're going to fix that in just a hot minute. We're going to call it in a minute. All right, so we've imported UUID, and now let's go ahead and start defining some of the constants that we're going to be using. So inside of our index.html, we have a few things that we're going to want to be pulling in. Now let me see if I can actually, want to be able to see if I can see this in the browser so we can kind of have it up and running while we're working with it. Let's see if it's still up. Did I? Oh, there we go. Yeah, we can see it. Okay. Perfect. All right. It's trying to translate that from Arabic for some reason, but so this is what this looks like. This is what our HTML looks like. So not too much going on there, but obviously we're going to want to be pulling in if we want to create our list of to-do items, we're going to want to be pulling in the input, right? We're going to want to be pulling in what's in the input. And then we're going to want to be writing stuff to our list, right? So those are a couple of things we're going to want to be pulling in. And then just in general, we're going to want to pull in information from the form, from the input, and dump it into the list. So we'll declare those constants. So first off, const list is going to be equal to document.querySelector. Now you might be saying, I thought you were supposed to be using TypeScript, and we will. We will. It looks a little different when you're using query selectors. So pull this across a little bit. All right, and we're going to get that from the one called list. Okay, so again, list is declared, but its value is never read. Now I want to specify that this const is an HTML list element that is a UL. So if I want to explicitly say that this is an HTML UL list element, I'm going to do so using the alligator brackets. So we saw a little bit of that earlier, right? We were looking at different ways to declare an array. In order to do that, I'm going to use the alligator brackets, and I'm going to declare it as an HTML UL list element. Now you can see it recognized what I was trying to do, and it auto-filled it in. So if I hover over this variable now, it's saying, hey, this can either be an HTML UL list element or null. Ryan says, does that convert it then? So convert it to what? Just want to make sure I understand the question. We'll also do our input, and I can kind of just copy this. Basically, we're not really converting anything. We're just checking for type, right? So we're just telling, we're telling, so let me take this off here. If I just don't set that, and I hover over it, if I don't set this specific type and I hover over it, look what it says it is. It just says it's an element. It doesn't know what type of element it is. It recognizes that it's an HTML element. It can infer that much, but it doesn't know exactly what it is. So if we want to be specific, we need to declare it as such. And so this is going to be an HTML input element. So you can try it with and without. If I can spell, there we go. HTML list element, it knows what that is. And once we do that, once we explicitly declare what type of an element it is, now TypeScript knows what sort of methods and operations we can do against this type of element specifically. So now it has access to all of the properties For look, if I hover it over here, it says provide special properties beyond those defined on the generic element interface. And it knows that we are going to be manipulating this as an unordered list with various elements. So it's smart enough to now know, oh, you're working with a list here. I'm going to make sure that you don't try to do anything that isn't valid to do with a list. And then same thing here. If I hover over it, it says provide special properties and methods for manipulating the options, layout, and presentation of elements. So these are now different. They're going to be read differently by TypeScript every time we invoke this variable. It knows what this is now, and it's going to know when we try to do something with it exactly what we're working with. All right, and MC Steel Track asked, "Is there a difference between the brackets and as? I've never been quite sure." Well, we're gonna see that in just a minute. All right, so the next thing we're gonna declare here is our form, const form. So for form, we're gonna get this one slightly differently. Instead of just a generic query selector and then grabbing the ID like this. Oh, and sorry, I did this wrong. This should be my apologies. This should be new task title. Yeah. So this is the exact element I wanted to grab here. The input element is called new task title. The list is called list. And now we're going to pull in our form as well. So for the form, instead of a query selector, I'm going to grab it by the ID. So I'm going to do document dot get element by ID and pull it in that way. That's valid too, right? We can pull things in if they have an ID, we can pull them in directly by their ID. Madeline says, "Oh, thank you for the follow. Happiness for all." Madeline says, "Can I see your errors in the terminal? I'm getting one extra." Oh, I just wasn't scrolled down. And these really aren't errors. So these yellow underlines are not errors. These are just cautions, just telling us that hey, your variable hasn't been read yet. And I'm perfectly aware, that we haven't written anything to read this variable yet. Oh, under problems, it just says it's not read. Same thing. So these underlines will match whatever is shown on the problems tab. Yeah. So Madeline, if you have some red underlines, if you have some red squigglies, then that could be that. Do you have a red squiggly under UUID, Madeline? Is that where your red squiggly is? And does it say something about uh, like doesn't have types or something like that? If anybody has a red squiggly under your UUID, don't panic. We will get to that in just a second after we finish declaring our constants here. We will fix that issue. Yeah, no worries, Madeline. We will fix that. Okay, so get element by ID. So for our form, we're going to get element by ID instead of doing a query selector, just to show you the difference between those two. So I'm going to get element by ID. I'm going to grab, and the name of that ID is just new task form. And here I'm going to use the as syntax. So HTML, you can say HTML form element and declare it that way. Yeah. And so MC Steel Toad asks, "Is there a difference between the brackets and as? I've never been quite sure." And Vorpal gave a great answer there. They said that type with the alligator brackets is generic typing, and as is explicitly telling TypeScript to interpret the assignation as the specified type. Yeah. So I'm not 100% sure, like as to the vagaries of the difference, but I do know that those are two different ways to do it. We are explicitly telling TypeScript that, hey, you should take this, and we are declaring it as type HTML form element. Although I can't say that I am 100%, totally down with the differences between these two. Vorpal says it's called casting in other languages. Yeah. And so that's actually something we do in SQL quite a bit, right? We can cast things as various types or as other names and things. Yeah, we do aliasing in SQL, yeah. Okay, so those are our constants that we're going to use. And I'm going to do, let's see, let me try something here. Step value, okay, good. All right, list is possibly, okay, so yeah, that's good. That's what I wanted to see. All right, perfect. Okay, so we've declared our constants. Now let's basically handle the what happens when somebody puts in a task and clicks submit. Oh, sorry, before we go on to that, for those of you who are getting red squigglies under your UUID, um, and I'm not sure why I'm not here, but it's just not caring about that right now. But normally you would get a red squiggly under here because what's happening here is UUID as a dependency does not have built-in types. And I want to see if I can, let me just bear with me for a second. I want to see if I can force that to show up. Huh. It's still not showing up for me, but I was expecting to see a red squiggly under here. I'm thinking that at least some of you probably have that. So what we can do is we can import types for UUID. So by default, when we installed UUID, it didn't have any built-in types. However, that is something we can import. So if you're getting the squigglies, or even if you're not, I would suggest installing those types. So what we can do is go to our other terminal, and we can run the following command. I don't think you did anything different. I got the red squigglies earlier today. I'm not sure why I'm getting them this time, but we can just say npm I and save dev at types / UUID. I'll paste this in chat. There we go. That's the command. npm I -- save dev at types / UUID. I wonder if anybody has the, looks like it's trying to do an @ and call on somebody with the Twitch name of types. So we'll see if anybody has that. So that's what you can do. Just run that command. And when you do that, we should see that appear in my list of dev dependencies. So there we go. It installed those types. And now under my dev dependencies and my package.json, I have all of the types that UUID will be referencing. So that should take care of that. Woo, red squiggle gone. Yay! Razwonder says, can we use HTML form element as well for get element by ID? I tried and getting errors. No, I don't believe you can. I believe you have to do it this way for get element by ID specifically. Some methods allow that alligator bracket notation, some don't. Which is why I did this, which is why we did it both different ways. Okay, now let's see if we can continue on with our functions here and get rid of some of those yellow squigglies where it's yelling at us for not using variables for things we haven't written yet. All right. So let's handle what happens when I type something into the box and I hit the add button or the submit button. So right now, by default, what happens whenever you create a form and you click submit is it submits the information if it can, right? It'll send it to a route or, send it to our server or whatever. And it will reload the page and clear the form. So that's just default behavior for a form when you click submit. We're going to create a function that's going to handle that behavior. So I'm going to say form dot, I'm going to add an event listener on my form. And I'm going to say on submit, we're going to have it do stuff. So instead of having it do the default action on submit, we're going to be listening for that submit click, and we're going to have it do something custom. So on that event, or E, you could say E here or event, either way, then do stuff. Whoops. All right, now what is it not like here? Cannot find name E. Okay, we'll see if that goes away. All right. The first thing I'm going to do is prevent the default behavior of what happens when you click submit. So for what we can do there is we can just say e dot prevent default. And what that'll do is when you click the submit button, it's going to suppress the default behavior that would happen when you click. And then, oh, I know what I did. Sorry. There we go. I forgot my arrow bracket. So it was telling me there was something wrong, and I should have listened. All right. So this is an arrow function, arrow required. So now it's taking in the click event, and it's saying, hey, when that happens, whatever the default action is for that click event, don't do it. Hey, logic. So prevent default can be useful because there can be a lot of HTML elements that have certain default behavior, right? So clicking submit, the default behavior is it tries to submit if it can and reloads the page, clears the form, all that stuff. That's all default. What we're telling it to do right here is, yeah, don't do that. We're going to control your behavior. Thank you very much. So now let's go ahead and just do let's do this. Let's say, all right, pretend we want to grab the value of the input box. So somebody has clicked the submit button. So I'm going to say, all right, let's see what's in there, input.value. Now, when I type that out, it immediately flags it. And it says input is possibly null. Interesting. So it's saying, all right, hey, it's possible that if somebody clicks the submit button, the input that gets passed in could be null. And right now, if you try to, do operations against a null value, you could have some unexpected behavior in your code, right? And it says basically, hey, this could possibly be null, and you're not doing anything to check for that or control that. So y'all might want to think about, adding some logic that's going to check for nulls and making sure that you're not letting that continue to the rest of your function. So it's basically just advising us that we want to add additional null logic. So we can do that. I'm going to take that recommendation and say, hey, input.value. Now, again, it says it's possibly null. We're gonna fix those squigglies in just a minute. I'll tell you how to do that. Input.value. See what it did there? I'll show you what that means in a minute. So we're checking to see if it's empty or null. And if it is, we don't want to do anything. We want to end the function right there and then. So notice how when I was typing out input.value, if I took the suggestion and I hit enter, it added a question mark. Does anybody know what the question mark means? Anybody know what the question mark means? We talked about it last week, but it was kind of like one of those things we discussed really quickly. And so it's perfectly fine if you don't remember, but we did talk about it last week. Does anybody remember? Yes, latjor, you're quick. Yeah, latjor. So latjor is correct. Yeah, this means that whatever value we're specifying here could potentially be optional. So basically it's saying, yeah, it's possible that this input value could be null. And when we add the question mark, we're just telling TypeScript that that's okay. That yes, TypeScript, I'm fully aware, TypeScript, this value could be null. But what we're doing right here is we're checking to make sure, and we're controlling for it. And we're saying, all right, if it is null, then end the function. Now, this is the coolest part. I know you might be like, oh, geez, why are we bothering with this? TypeScript is so picky, and it's probably going to keep giving us, like, why does this matter, this check that we're doing, if TypeScript is going to keep yelling at us every time we try to use it anyway? Watch what happens now. If I can spell. It doesn't add the question mark anymore. TypeScript is so smart. It recognizes that we have, in the previous line, we have done all of the appropriate checks, and it is now no longer possible for this value to be null. We have controlled for that possibility, so TypeScript will no longer yell at us because it is not physically possible for this value to be null anymore. We have ruled that out. And so TypeScript's like, yeah, you're cool, man. Keep going. Thanks, bro. So now we can use it as normal. So I think that's pretty neat. TypeScript is very smart, and it's understanding what we've done here, and so now we're in the clear. We're in the clear. It warned us that we had a possibility of unexpected behavior by allowing null values into our function. We have eliminated the possibility of null values. Now TypeScript is happy. It likes what we're doing, and it's going to let us continue like we were before. Raz Wonder says, I'm sold. I'm glad. Yeah, it's pretty cool, right? It's very smart. Madeline, yeah, I don't remember actually. Does anybody remember when you submit just like an empty form? Is it an empty string or is it truly null? I don't remember. What is the default behavior of a form? If somebody wants to look that up and let us know, that'd be great. All right. So Champo, it might take a minute if you have a slow machine. Sometimes TypeScript takes a little bit to update its logic. You could always try, saving and just giving it a minute. Sometimes it does take a while for the gears to turn and for it to update its logic. All right. So now that we've done that, let's essentially we're going to set up an object for our new task. So we're taking in this information from our form, and essentially we just want to store that information in an object. So we can declare that. I'm going to call it new task. So this is going to be like all the information that gets passed in from the form, and then some additional information that we might want to store, such as like the date. So the ID value is going to be automatically generated by our UUID dependency that we installed here. So I can call that very simply just by doing that. And whenever that gets called, it's just going to generate a new ID. I'm going to have a title, which is going to be equal to input.value. And one thing to notice here is that since we specified, what type of HTML element each of these are, it's only going to give me a list of methods that are valid for that type of element. So, if I try to use a method that wasn't valid with like input HTML elements, it's not going to let me use it. It's going to underline that and it's going to yell at me. So it's only going to give me methods or, things that I can do to input type elements. So if you'll notice, I think when we, well, hopefully I can find a good example later on as we're working on this. When we try to reference, like, for example, when we reference our list later on, you'll see that if we, access something in the list, it's only going to give me things that are valid to do with a list. My laptop's so hot right now. Am I using an extension for TS suggestions? No, I'm not. It's all just built in. TypeScript is smart enough to know what you're working on, and it will give you suggestions that are appropriate for the type of the thing that you are working on at that moment. So pretty nice. All right, we're going to have a completed value. This is going to be controlled by our checkbox eventually. Completed false, and then created at is going to be a date. All right, and then if I hover over these, we'll see that even though I didn't explicitly give them a type, it knows, it has inferred the type based on what we've assigned, right? So I set completed to false, and so if I hover over it, it says, yeah, that's a Boolean. I get you. It's a Boolean. And then title, is a string, and ID is a string. It's actually pulling that from the type list that we installed. So it knows that UUID v4 is assigned as a string, and then created at is a date. Now, like I mentioned before, this is not necessarily the best way to do this. We're going to fix that later. So bear with me. We will be explicitly defining these later on, but for now, we can just hover over these and see how TypeScript is able to infer what they are based on how we've assigned them. All right, and then after that, I'm just going to call a function, which we're going to declare in a second, called add list item, and we're going to pass in new task into it. So this function, which we're going to write in a minute, will take in the new task and it'll essentially add it to the list. Yeah, Metal, I'm not sure why the hovering isn't working. I don't think I have any specific extensions installed that are doing that. I've really kept this very vanilla. I mean, I have lots of extensions, but I have let's see, making sure here. Yeah, I don't have anything. These are I only have 8 extensions installed. I have a couple things for comments. I have one that runs, can run code in the terminal. I have React Native stuff, live server, REST clients, VS Code pets because that's fun, and a couple more things for commenting. But no, I don't have anything special here. Maybe there's something in the docs about it. Well, it is time for a break anyway, so you could always research that over the break if you wanted to. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I didn't have anything installed to do that specifically, but I don't. All right. And so, yeah, I think it is time to take a break. But yeah, when you hover over these, TypeScript should display what they are. Yeah. So it is time to take a break. When we come back, we're going to actually declare this add list item function because right now it's yelling at us because it can't find it. See, it doesn't like that. And so we're going to go ahead and declare this function, and we're going to start setting up some additional types. Now, one thing just to note before we go on break, notice that Vite is keeping track of how many times it has reloaded the page. Every time we save, it's automatically reloading our page. It's acting sort of like NodeMon. It's looking for changes inside of our source folder to any TypeScript files, and it's every time it senses a change, it reloads and captures those changes. And then it also recognized too when we installed a dependency, it said, "Oh, you installed the dependency. I should reload." So it's very smart about that. It's watching for those types of things and it's noting them for you in the terminal. Wow, thank you for the follow, folks. Latjar, wow, so many follows. Rosenbrock, Arav, and Blackflower, thank you. So, Latjar, one thing to note is I don't have any extensions installed for that either, and it is showing the hover for me. So I'm not sure why it, wouldn't for Madeline, but yeah, I mean, you could always try. I don't have the extension, but if it's really not working, you could always try installing one. It's all good. You can never have too many extensions, right? Okay, so hey, Blackflower, I don't have that command enabled, but I'm happy to be I'll be your bot. So what we're doing today is a very simple TypeScript project using Vite as our bundler. So all we've done so far is just set up some very basic HTML to add a form, and we're sort of practicing the basics of TypeScript and how we would use TypeScript to actually build a project. So if you want to catch up, or if anybody wants to catch up, let me paste some commands in chat. So first we started out by installing Vite. And you can do that by doing npm create Vite in your project. And then we also have already, and so what that will do is it will start a new project for you. You can create a project name, and then you're going to want to choose vanilla framework and TypeScript for your options. So I put that in chat as well, vanilla framework and or just vanilla and then TypeScript, and that will create a new TypeScript project for you. And we have also done a simple import. Let's see, I don't have this on GitHub yet, but I'm feeling like I kind of want to. So over the break, I'm going to put this up on GitHub so folks that want to catch up can catch up. So you can, grab my code and, go ahead and set up your Vite project, and then I'll push this up to GitHub, and you can grab the HTML and the JavaScript, or sorry, the TypeScript that we've done so far. Oh, hey, Rascal, good to see you. All right, break time. I'll get this pushed to GitHub over the break. Get yourself a drink, get up, stretch, and then when we come back, we'll keep going. All right. Reset the timer here. Ah, Madeline says they had hover disabled in settings. Yeah, so if you're not seeing those, you have a setting turned off that's preventing the helpful hover tips from showing up. Yeah. All right. All right, so 5 minutes. During the break, I'll be pushing this to GitHub, and then I'll give you the repo link when we come back. All right, see you in 5. Hey, thank you for the follow there, Lubix. I've got the repo set up for all the code we've done so far. After I pushed it up to GitHub and I saw the language ratio, I saw that I left a crap ton of CSS in there. You don't need any of the CSS. If you're grabbing this code down from the repo, ignore the CSS. Just focus on the HTML and the TypeScript that we've done so far. So there's the repo. If you want to pull it down, grab the HTML, grab the TypeScript, and you should be good to go. We've got about a minute, well, about 30 seconds left in the break. So get ready to come on back, grab a glass of water, stretch your legs, stretch your arms, pet your dog, and then come on back. Hey, Rascal, good to hear that the hunt is going well. It's awesome. All right, I'm going to stop the timer here. We are cooking with gas, my friends. Turn my camera back on, maybe. There we go. Hi, folks. We are back. Yeah, by the way, if any of y'all aren't following Rascal 2 yet, please do. They are our omnipresent code wizard, and they do a lot of really cool projects on their channel. I can see if I can give them a shout out here. Shout out. Let's see. Rascal 2. See if that works. Hey, there we go. All right. So, yeah, check them out. Definitely. They've got some really, if you want to learn React, they've got some really cool projects, tons of React projects on their channel as well. Oh my goodness. So I've got two foster kitten naming requests in the queue. So man, I gotta get some foster kittens real quick. Drunk Uncle Grandma redeemed one last time, and Madeline has just redeemed one this time. So I gotta get me a litter of foster kittens. Madeline says I'm patient. Alrighty. Well, I'll let both of you know as soon as I get some. Okay, let's get back to it. This is the wrong file. I apologize. It'd help if I had the right file pulled up. Cripes on a cracker. There we go. Okay, so what we did is before the break, we set up our constants to grab the stuff from our forms, right? Grabbed everything from our form. And then we set up an event listener to listen for the click. So when somebody clicks the button, we don't want it to actually submit. We don't want to reload the page and try to submit something. What we're going to want is to capture the form data. We're grabbing the data from the input. We're generating a unique ID for that data. We're giving it a completed flag, which is we're going to hook up to a checkbox, and we're giving it a created date. And all this information is going to be stored in local storage eventually. And then after that, we're essentially going to take this object and we're going to pass it into a function called add list item. And we're going to declare that function in just a second. Drunk Uncle says, speaking of the hunt, I got my first no reply auto accept for robot round 2. Ooh, I've never heard this with the thing. Yeah, I know they do like the robot screenings like for round 1, but round 2 robot. Yeah, that's a new one on me too. I've never encountered that before. All right. Thank you for the follow, Kainchi. Okay. So add list item, passing in our tasks. So function add list item. And what we're going to pass into this is just a parameter called task. And we've got an underline here. This is underlined for us because parameter task implicitly has an any type. And we've talked about any types before, right? Wherever possible, we want to be explicit about our type declarations, about what we're passing into our functions, right? And TypeScript is not happy that we haven't declared that. So let's declare it then. So into this add list item, I want to pass in everything that's in new task, which is an object. And that object should contain 1, 2, 3, 4 values, right? So, okay, let's do that. So task, it's going to need an ID, which is going to be a string. It's going to be a title, which is going to be a string, right? Completed, it's going to be a Boolean, and created at is going to be a date. Okay. It says, that's never read, but whatever. So this looks kind of gross, right? This looks kind of gross. It's perfectly valid, but it makes our function look really yucky, right? We haven't even gotten to the function body yet. It's also kind of repetitive, right? We've already specified all this information up here. We didn't ever really explicitly declare it. We use type inference to read what these are. And now we're going down here and we're saying exactly the same thing again. And it's just a lot. And we're going to be using like these same sort of definitions later on. When we're saving these things into local storage, we're going to be using it. When we, when we save it to local storage, when we want to read it back from local storage, we're going to be using this same framework over and over and over again to get all of this task data. So what's a way that we could reduce the amount of repetition of having to type this same object over and over and over and over and over again? What's something that we've learned that will allow us to not have to type this thing over and over again, but still get the same definition of all of these items? Yeah, exactly. We can use a type alias, right? Yeah, we can make our own types. Yeah, we can make our own types. Yeah, that was the word. Yep. Type alias. Exactly. So what I want to do instead is move all this information out of this function definition, and I'm going to move it all the way up here at the top, declare it once, define this type one, this task type once as an alias, and then I can reference it wherever the flip I want as many times as I want, and it's going to know exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah. So up here at the top, I'm just going to say underneath my import statement here, I can just say type task, and it's going to be uppercase. And I'm going to add all these things that I, same stuff I said down here. I can just copy paste, take these, drop them in, boop, boop. There we go. Type task. And now, if I can save that. Now, instead of dumping all this inside of my function parameters, I can just say task and then reference the custom type that I created before. Get rid of that extra bracket there. There. Now, that looks much better, and it's a much more readable function declaration. And also, if I hover over this, I can see exactly what it's referencing. So what is a task? Oh, it's this. It's an object containing 4 values: ID, string, title, string, completed, Boolean, created at, date. Very nice. ASAP, thank you for the follow. It is cool, right? Yeah. And you can do this for, all sorts of types. As complex as you want. We'll see. What we'll see later is this will come in really handy when we want to, add things into local storage, right? We're eventually going to have an array with a bunch of tasks in it. And so instead of having to redefine, this task object over and over again, we can just say, yep, everything in this array is going to have the shape of this task object. So we can just reference that. All right. And also, I can do the same thing. Now that I have this task type, I can do an explicit declaration on my new task object as well. So I can say, oh yeah, new task also follows that same shape. Before, TypeScript just kind of inferred it, right? But we want to be explicit. So I can say const new task is Well, it's task. So it also follows that shape. So now what we've done is we said this object should match all of these requirements, should be an object containing these four things. And then also the thing that we pass into our add list item function should also meet all of those requirements. So again, we're just being thorough here, and we're making sure that nothing is lost or changed along the way. Okay, that makes that look a lot better. So now let's fill out the add list item function. Madeline says, is it best practice to put it at the very top, all your types? I mean, I would think you would probably want it in the same vicinity of like your constants and stuff, you know, your declarations of things that you're going to be using over and over and over again. I don't know for sure, but I would assume so. It's kind of similar to, you know, like a constant or something. If you're going to be referencing it repeatedly, you probably want it at the top with all the rest of your constants. So let's fill out our function here. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to essentially be creating for each task. I'm going to be creating a list item and with a label, and it's going to have a checkbox next to it. So it's going to be a list item with a checkbox next to it and have a label on it. So I can just say const item document create element. That's how we can, you know, generate an HTML element. And I'm going to set it to li. So that's what that's going to do, is it's going to create an li list element. And then also I'm going to create const label. And again, document.create element. This time we're going to create a label. And I'm going to say const checkbox. And again, document.create element. Checkbox. There we go. Okay. And something interesting here. Notice again that we did not explicitly declare what these things are, but if I hover over them, look what it says they are. Look how it was able to infer them. So if I hover over item, it says, oh yeah, that is an HTML li element. So it's smart enough to know, yeah, what you just created there, that's a list item. If I hover over the checkbox. So this one it doesn't understand, but we're going to assign that in a minute. This one it does. It says, oh yeah, that's an HTML label element. But we can set checkbox, checkbox.type, not tup, sorry, type. And we can set that to checkbox. Let's see, did I, oh, sorry, this is wrong. That's why I didn't recognize it. I did it wrong. All right, there we go. So, so if I hover over this, yeah, now it knows that that's an input element. So this is an li, this is a label, and this is an input. Now, if I hover over that checkbox, it recognizes it as an HTML input element, which is what a checkbox is. It's just another way of inputting data, right? We're not typing anything into it, but it is still an input element. It is a checkbox. And so we can just here set the type to checkbox. So when this is created, it will have a type equals checkbox assigned in the tag. And now all I'm going to do is just set it up so it displays the checkbox and the task title. We'll see how this looks in a minute. And then item.append the label. All we're doing here, I'll tell you what we're doing here in a second, but it's just, we're just setting up the structure of what's going to be generated. List.append item. Okay. And then once again, it gave us our little question mark here, because it is possible that potentially there could be no item to append. Sorry, that was my dog. There could be no item to append, so it's just saying, hey, this is potentially optional. You don't really have to worry about that. It's auto added anyway. So it's just recognizing that there's a possibility this could be empty, and so it's adding the question mark. All right. Oh, and Rascal says, yep, top of file is the norm. If the type is used in multiple different JS files, some bigger code bases have a types.ts file containing all custom types. Yeah, that makes sense. If you have a very large code base, you would just have your separate file containing all your custom types, and then you would just import it into every place you wanted to use those. Madeline says, no problems have been found. So satisfying. Yeah. Yeah, when your little problems tab is empty, then that's great. Yep. Okay, and then the last thing we want to do here is sort of zero out our form. So underneath my call for the add list item, I'm just going to say input dot value equals empty. So after we add the list item, we just want to clear the form. Now, if I save this, I'm going to see, we should potentially be able to see if it's working. So let's do test. Hey, check it. Yay. Hey, nice. So let's see what's happening here. What is this doing? So what it's doing is it's creating the label, the input, and the checkbox elements, or sorry, the list item, the label, and the checkbox elements. And then all it's doing is it's appending the checkbox and the task title to the label. It's appending the label to the list item, and then it's adding that list item to the list. So if we look at our, if we do our little inspect here, and just kind of expand our body, what you should see is 3 list items containing a label, containing a checkbox, and containing the task title. So that's all we did, is just appended those kind of in reverse order, right? We generated the elements first, then we said, all right, label, attach the checkbox and the task title to it, and then attach everything inside the label to our list item, attach the list item to the list. Let's go, indeed. All right, so we're making pretty good progress here, I should say. So let's see. Okay, good, got time. Now that we've done that and it's working, the problem is every time I reload the page, it's going to go away, right? Every time I reload, I lose what's there. Now, we don't necessarily want that. What we would prefer is that if I reload the page, everything stays where it is, or if I close the page entirely, I'm able to access the items I've already entered, retrieve them, and add them as list items, right? So I can do that by utilizing local storage. And you may be familiar with local storage, you may not. But essentially what local storage is just state machine time. Yeah. It's just holding that information in your browser. And so that if when you reopen the page again, you can retrieve that information from the local browser storage and re-render it. And I'll show you how to access that. It can be useful when you're developing things. So you don't always have to build out. If you're just working on a concept or a proof of concept, especially. So let's say you're building something, your manager wants you to build a mock-up of a user interface, and you want to have some easily accessible data. So when your manager comes over, you can be like, all right, hey, I want to show you this. I've got some data built in. As soon as we load the homepage, you'll see some stuff populate on the dashboard. You could have that stored in local storage. So it's just, running in your, stored in your browser versus having to build out an entire database and like a fully functional server and all that stuff if you're not even sure, whether your manager is going to like what you did, right? So, oh, thank you for the gift, Ladjor. I appreciate the bits. Yeah. I'm a web dev. You are. Yeah. And so that could be a good use case for local storage. So rather than having to build out your full backend, you could just be like, hey, proof of concept time, look at this, sign off on it. If you sign off on it, I will build out the backend. Or you don't even have to tell them and they won't know the difference, right? But you can use local storage as a good intermediary while you're working on something. Yeah, how are they going to know that, right? All right. So let's do our local storage. Um, build it out and tell them you've not done it yet. Sure. Whatever you want to do, my friend. I'm not advocating anything. So up in my const list here, I'm just going to declare an array where we're going to save our, so it's just going to be an array where we're going to save all these tasks. It's just going to be a list of tasks. It's where we're going to put them. So const tasks, and then that's going to be equal to an empty array. Now, I want to declare this. I want to declare this as an array which contains multiple copies of our task object. So, how do you think I might declare this array so that it contains multiple copies of our task object? Can anybody tell me what that statement might look like? Based on what we know about how we can declare array types, and we know that I have a custom task type that we've declared, right? How would I declare this array to use that to be an array containing nothing but our task object? Yeah, exactly. So just like I was declaring an array of numbers or something like that, I could, this is valid. I could say, this, oops, task colon, sorry. So that would be me declaring an array of nothing but numbers or an array of nothing but strings. I can do the same thing with our custom type, which is task. And now what it's expecting is an array of nothing but our task object over and over and over and over again. Yes, that is correct, Blackjaw. Yep, you're exactly right. Mm-hmm. So now that's what this array is going to be expecting. And once we reference that later on, you'll see that that's what it wants us to put in there. Now, if I try to say something like true, try to put a Boolean in there, it says, nope, task type Boolean is not assignable to type task. So it is enforcing that, and it is expecting this or nothing. Hey, Faff and a Boot, how you doing? Hope you're having a good day. Okay, so now down here, now that I have this array declared, under my new task, basically every time we get a new task in, I want to push it to our tasks array. So I can just say tasks dot push, and what I want to push to it is new task. So this new task object, which we already know fits the requirements of our task type, can be pushed into this array, and that is valid because it meets the array requirements, right? Everything is formatted the same way. Everything has the same type. So TypeScript is happy because we are sending it exactly what it wants for this array. All right. And what I also want to do is save this to our local storage. So I can call, I'm going to call another function called save tasks, which you're going to declare in a second, to save it to local storage. It doesn't like that because we haven't declared the function yet, but we will. It's got to be patient. All right. No worries, Faff and a Boot. Good to see you. Feel free to catch the VOD. Absolutely. Also, too, if you missed last week, I would suggest checking out the intro to TypeScript that I did last week. This is a little bit more involved if you're new to TypeScript. All right. Now, in my add list item function down here, I want to add, so another thing that I want to do is I'm going to say, let's say I add something here. I have my checkbox, right? I can click it, but right now this checkbox is not doing anything. It's not affecting our task object at all. And when I save something in local storage, I want this completed flag to flip on and off, right, as I make changes. So if I were to pull this object out of local storage later, I would want it to be marked as complete. I wouldn't want to lose that checkbox. So I need some logic that's going to flip this flag uncompleted every time I click the checkbox. So we're going to write that logic, and then once we get it hooked up, then we'll be able to see that flag flip back and forth. Yeah, absolutely, Fat Fun. Definitely check out last week's stream first. Yep. Okay. So now in our add list item down below, I'm going to add an event listener on our checkbox. I want to be listening for clicks, and as soon as it changes, I'm going to say checkbox.add event listener. I want to capture that click. So we can capture the specific change event when the checkbox is clicked and trigger this event listener or this Smurf, whatever you want to call it. I was never too hyped about the Smurf name. I don't know about you all. Never too jazzed about that name, but whatevs. So when that happens, when we register a change to the checkbox, we can say task.completed is equal to checkbox dot checked. So what that's going to do is it's going to, so whenever you click a checkbox, it's either in a true state or a false state. So checked is true, unchecked is not. So when this changes, the completed value inside of our task is going to be set to either true or false depending on the state of the checkbox. So we're just matching this that completed value to whatever the current state of the checkbox is. Nothing crazy. And then or you could do it back. You could do it backwards if you wanted to. That's up to you, really. go. You'd go for the chaotic option if that's your, if that's your thing. All right, and then we're going to save tasks. Call our save task functions, which will save it to local storage, which we're going to create next. Take one. Let's see if I'm missing anything here. Checkbox, task completed, checks. Okay, yeah, and also too, underneath here, I need to add a little bit of additional logic. So we're doing a couple things here. I'll explain in a second. There we go. Oops. So we're adding this check twice. So inside of our add list function, we are listening for the change, setting task completed to checkbox.checked, setting up the checkbox type, and we are setting the check value in the box itself. So we're doing two things. We're saving it to local storage as a true false value, whether or not it was completed, and then we are displaying it in the list with that appropriate value. Posture check. Oh, thank you. I tend to be a bit of a hunched over gremlin. I don't know about anybody else, but my posture sucks. That's why I stand up when I stream, because it helps me have slightly better posture. I'm not such a keyboard gremlin, but yeah, it's bad. That's why I have a standing desk here. Got to burn some calories somehow. Relatable. Thank you for the follow, Yan Zombie. Okay. Now, finally, we can add our local storage, save and load, now that we've set up all the logic that we need. So let's set up our function save tasks. Save tasks so that TypeScript stops yelling at us. And, oh, I can push, yeah, let me push this to the repo because, yeah, if you fell behind, that's perfectly fine. Let me just do a quick push here. So let me do git add, and we'll do our git commit. We'll say add item logic, added item logic. All right, and git push. There you go. Repo has been updated. I will link to it again. Oh yeah, you mentioned live share and I forgot about it. I forget things. Let's see. Ah, here we go. There's the repo again. You can ignore the CSS file. We're not using it. And inside of save tasks, what we're going to do is we are going to simply set our local storage item. And that's very easy to do. If you've never used local storage before, it might seem daunting, but it's a good thing to know how to do. All we need to do in order to save something to local storage is simply say local storage.set item. We give that item a name. I'm going to call it tasks. You can call it whatever you want. And then the second thing we do is just pass in what we want to save. And so in order to save an object into local storage, we need to stringify it. So we need to turn it into a string. Fortunately, that's very easy to do. We literally have a method we can use called json.stringify. That's literally what it's called. And we're passing in our tasks into that, and it will save that in local storage for us. And then in order to retrieve things from local storage, all we need to do is we're going to set up another function to do that. We're just going to call that load tasks. Retrieving from local storage is also very easy. We can just say return, again, call json.parse. That's going to take that stringified storage object out of local storage, pull it down, and retrieve it for us. Okay, let me make sure I got that right. One second. I think it's fine. Oh, yeah, okay. I know why this is underlined. That's something I wanted to talk about. Oh, Fafinaboot asked, do you post VODs to YouTube or anything more permanent? Yes, so do exclamation point YouTube in chat. That's a link to my YouTube channel. That's where all my videos end up. They will end up there prior to them expiring. They don't go there immediately because it takes several hours for them to process. You know, like it's something I like to do in batches because it takes so long. It usually takes the majority of a day. But yes, they do end up there, and that's where you can find my entire back catalog. First try, indeed. All right, so why is this underlined? It says cannot find name task JSON. Let me see if I missed something here. Oh, I'm a dingus. All right, I know what I did. Hang on one second. I need to add a little bit more to this. I need to define task JSON first. So I'm going to call it, actually, wait, no, I don't. I'm going to do this. I'm going to say, let's see if this will do it. Maybe the tasks. I'm trying to force something to happen here. Oh well, that's okay. We'll define task JSON first. We'll see if I can trigger it that way. I'm trying to force an error. Come on, TypeScript, bear with me. All right, that's all right. We're going to define task JSON. And I'm going to do that. Oops. Trying to make a teachable moment, TypeScript, geez. All right, local storage, and then we're going to get item called tasks. All right, now are you going to play ball? Aha, that's what I wanted. Good, perfect. Hey, Swarm Collective. Freedom Dow says, I'm scared of TypeScript. What if I'm not good at typing? I assume you mean, what if you're not good at assigning types? Well, the nice thing about TypeScript is it's not going to ever prevent you from compiling your code. It might yell at you by underlining things, but it's never going to prevent you from compiling. And another thing too is that TypeScript, if you don't assign the appropriate types, I mean, it will tell you that that's not appropriate, and you can always go back and change your type assignment. So if it doesn't work when you assign it the first time, if it's not doing what you expect, or tracking the appropriate things in the appropriate ways, you can go back and reassign that type to something different, or maybe create a union type that's a little bit more flexible. If you want to learn more about what are the types that you can use, I would highly suggest checking out my stream from last week where we spend a lot of time talking about those individual types and what they're for and when you can use them. So if that's your concern, I would suggest checking out my stream from last week. Got to start somewhere. Absolutely. Yeah, no worries, Freedom. Yeah, check out my stream from last week if you want a very gentle introduction to what TypeScript is for and how to use it. Okay, so task JSON is underlined. Um, why is it underlined? Well, it says argument of type string or null is not assignable to parameter of type string. Type null is not assignable to type string. So what is it telling us here? Well, the thing is that JSON.parse specifically it cannot handle nulls. So it is expecting a string. That's what it wants. That's what it needs. And so TypeScript here is warning us that we should not be ever passing nulls into JSON.parse because it cannot handle it. So TypeScript is kind of watching out for us here. It's like, whoa, buddy, if there's any chance this is going to be empty, or if there's any chance it's going to be null, you're going to get an error and you're not going to have a good time. So you might want to consider doing something about this to make sure it can't be null before you try to pass it into JSON.parse. Now, to be fair, it didn't tell us that specifically, but it did say type null is not assignable to type string because it knows JSON.parse is looking for strings and it can't handle nulls. And so we should probably deal with that. So that's very easy to do. I can just say if task JSON null, actually, double equals there, return empty array. Oh, and sorry, and I did say that wrong. Oh, yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, no, it's good. So basically, we're just saying, hey, if this is null, then return an empty array. JSON will be able to handle it, and everything will be fine. We don't now we're basically removing the possibility of an unexpected behavior or error from JSON.parse. EOS, yeah, that's a great question. I'll talk more about that in just a minute. But yeah, I'm happy to answer that question. We're almost done here though. So we have our save and load now, right? And so we can save things to local storage. We're calling that when we create a new item, we're saving it to local storage, and then we're loading it, which we haven't called yet, but we're going to load that whenever we generate our list. So if I have a bunch of items in local storage, I want to read those, and I want to generate a list with all those items, as well as adding new items as I fill out the form and click submit. Okay. And then, the last thing here I need to do for load tasks. Thank you for reminding me, Kara. So what I'm expecting out of local storage, well, I'll ask the question. If I'm saving these tasks to local storage as a big old array, or sorry, a big old string, and what I'm getting back when I load it what I'm getting back from JSON parse is an array, a plain array of my tasks. What do you think my return type should be for this function? I'm using JSON.parse to go into local storage and essentially just get an array of all my tasks. So what is my return type for this function? Anybody know? Saving my tasks as an array. So what specifically is going to be my return type? It's going to be an array, but what kind of an array? What specific type of array? Yeah, Carl, you got it. Yep, Carl got it. Yeah, it's going to be specifically an array. Oops, sorry. It's going to be an array of type task. Yeah, so like Swarm Collective said, they declared it in a different way, but yes, this is essentially doing the same thing as what Swarm said. So yes, it's going to be this. This is what we are going to be returning, an array of tasks. There we go. So what we're getting out of this, what we always expect to retrieve from local storage, is an array containing objects which have all of our task information inside of them. And we'll see this once we're able to load to local storage. Actually, we can look at it now because I have some things in local storage from the last time I built this. So let's just look. That might make it clear to show, okay, what are we storing here? So I'm just going to do an inspect here. I'm going to do application and pull this across more. And we'll look into local storage. See, oh, I don't have, dang it. I don't have anything in there anymore. I cleared it out. Sorry. Okay, we'll have to run it and then I'll show you what's in there. Did you figure it out, Madeline? We're almost done. Madeline, we're almost done. And then we have a couple more lines to write. And then I'll push up to GitHub and then maybe you can figure out what, you can look at the GitHub code and see what might be going on there. Okay, you got the gist. Good. All right, so I'm going to define my entire list as document dot, oh, sorry, no, I already did that. My bad. Sorry. I'm going to scroll up. All I need to do is add a couple more things to my constant list up here at the top, and then we'll be done. So I've defined everything I need. Now, basically, all I need to do is call the load tasks function. So instead of our task array being empty, I'm just going to populate it with everything we got out of local storage. Boop, boop. So now this array is going to contain everything out of local storage. It's going to, then all we're going to do is just say, for each task in that array, I'm going to call the add list item function. So what it's going to do, what's happening here? What it's going to do is go into local storage, grab the list of all the tasks, loop through each task, create a list item for it, and display that on the page. So let's see if that works. And if it does, then they'll push this up to GitHub, and anybody who's having trouble can access the GitHub. All right, do that, test, add, perfect. And let's look in local storage. We should see it. There we go. We see it. It's there. Let's see what's being stored. So what's being stored is an array, right? We have an array here. And inside of that array, we're going to have multiple objects with all of the properties of a task. We have our completed, created at, ID, and title. Those 4 things. Now, if I add something else, we can see that's been added to the list. Boop, boop. It's being stored in local storage. It has all 4 items in it. It is an object inside of an array. Freedom Dow says, is an array like a database? An array is a method of storing things, but databases are much more complicated. So databases can store massive volumes of data. Imagine if you had 1,000,000 tasks. Imagine if you had 1,000,000 tasks. Would you really want to put those in an array? Probably not, right? You'd want to store them in a place that's much more robust, that's optimized for you to look for a specific item. So let's say I have 1,000,000 items, 1,000,000 tasks, and I want to grab task, I don't know, 687. Well, if I was looping through an array to try to find it, that would suck. That's not something that you want to do. It's just completely resource inefficient. What you can do instead is store those somewhere else, someplace that's not inside of your application. It's outside. It's in a warehouse essentially. It's like how people put things in storage units, right? You got too much stuff, you buy a storage unit and you put your stuff in there. And then when you need a specific thing, you go to the storage unit and you get it. But it's not taking up space in your house all the time. And so that's what databases are for. Is an array. What's the difference between vector storage and this? Let's say I have an AI bot with long-term memory using Pinecone / vector storage. So like, is the vector store more like an array or a database? So are you talking like, like GraphQL or something like that? So vector storage is, vector storage allows for multiple types of connections between objects, between individual objects. From what I understand, I don't know too much about it. But databases are an entirely different animal entirely from an array. I mean, arrays are much smaller. They're meant for much smaller chains of data. They are a way of storing things or of putting things in a particular group. But databases are much larger. I'm still not quite sure I'm following your question. I don't even consider them in the same league, I guess. Yeah. Um, okay, but our storage seems to be working. So let me go ahead and push this up to GitHub like I said I would. Woo! Madeline! Thank you for the gifted subs. Holy cannoli. Thank you. If you just received a gifted sub from Madeline, I would highly suggest please give them a thank you in chat. Oh, thank you. And also, if you just subbed, you now have access to a bunch of custom emotes. So please do enjoy those. You should be able to choose from lovely little green wolf emotes. So feel free to make use of those. Thank you, Madeline. All right, let me push this up to GitHub. There you go. The repo has been updated. Push it real good. Yeah. And I like that answer, Swarm Collective. Yeah, an array, I guess, would probably be most comparable to a very small table within a database, specifically within a traditional relational database. So there's different types of databases, right? You've got relational, you've got NoSQL object-based databases, and you've got, more vector type stuff, GraphQL, that kind of thing. And yeah, you would not want to store the entire contents of like a relational database table inside of inside of memory, inside of an array, inside of your application. That would not be a good idea. Definitely offload where you can. Dump things into a SQL table or a MongoDB database. That would be much preferred. Hey, Alberto, what's your question? All right, and somebody asked earlier about TypeScript, and I need to answer that question as well. Let me scroll back up and read it again. So why do people use TS over JS? I thought they were very similar. They are. So TypeScript is what we might call a wrapper for JavaScript. So you can write, TypeScript actually does what we call TypeScript basically compiles to JavaScript. So you write TypeScript to help you make JavaScript strictly typed, right? To assign types to variables, to assign specific input types to function, input and output to function, and then also just add more strictness to JavaScript. However, before you run that, say, in the browser, you then transpile it to JavaScript. So they aren't all that different, but you can think of TypeScript like a wrapper that goes around JavaScript and adds additional features such as strict typing, checking for various things such as spelling errors, usage errors, adding limitations and guardrails and strictness to your JavaScript code. Because if you're familiar with JavaScript, you probably know that it's got no rules, baby. You can add, have a string called three and have it have the number three in it, and then you can add that to a number three. And JavaScript don't care, right? It doesn't care what you're trying to do. If it can do it, it will do it, and it's going to spit it back out at you. So JavaScript is loosey goosey, and that can be dangerous, especially when you're working with a team. And so, what TypeScript does is adds additional rules, strictness, and validation to your code. So, it kind of holds your hand while you're coding. It's like, hey, buddy, I see what you're trying to do. That kind of breaks the rules. You might want to think about changing it. But the crucial thing about TypeScript is that it doesn't ever stop you from doing things. It's like a good parent, right? A good parent is going to warn you about stuff. It's going to be like, "Hey buddy, the that candle is hot. You probably don't want to stick your finger in there." But they're probably, going to let you do it anyway, like once, right? They're going to be like, "All right, I warned you." And then, you do it anyway and it hurts. And so it's not going to necessarily stop you. You can compile bad code or code that TypeScript does not like into JavaScript and run it. That's perfectly fine. But it is going to warn you about it before you do it. So it just adds those additional checks, checking for stupid stuff like spelling errors, or checking for important stuff like um, like trying to pass the wrong variable into a function. So it's helpful for you. It takes a little bit more on the front end, like while you're developing. It takes a little bit more to write it, right? We got to do additional things like defining what types of things these list elements are. When we declare when we declare a new object, we have to give it a type. We have to define that type. When we declare an array, we have to define it. And so it does take a little bit more on the run up when you're building it. But I think you find there's an overall time savings without having to try to find that stupid spelling mistake you made 3 modules deep after you've tried to deploy your app and it failed. Thanks for joining us today, Kara. Wild, wild west of Java and scripting. Absolutely. Alberto asked, Mine Wolf, how many WPM can you type? You're a fast typer in typing speed. I'm afraid I don't know. I'm not very fast. Alberto, it's nice to be a decently fast typer. I'm okay. I'm decent. If I'm really cooking, I can code pretty quickly. I tend to type slower on stream because I've got more things going on in my head, and I can't really think about spelling while I'm talking. I'm decently fast, but I'm not a whiz. I never was. In typing class, I was never close to being the fastest. And so you don't necessarily have to be a fast typer to, you know, be able to write code. It does help if you're faster because you can just generate more output, right? But if you can effectively use things like the IntelliSense type features that can autocomplete for you, things like Emmet, or the suggestions that come up when you're typing, as in using things like TypeScript. It will give you suggestions, and if you can use the keyboard to help auto-populate those suggestions, that can be helpful if you are a slower typer, to make better use of those. And there's things like GitHub Copilot, which can help auto-generate code based on it sensing what you're trying to do. So never fear if you're not all that fast. There's tools that you can make use of that can help make you faster. Thank you for the follow, Eos and Ankis. Oh, Dr. Moto, that's too bad. That's unfortunate that other programmers on stream will not let you ask questions. I don't think I feel like if you're putting yourself out there and coding on stream, then you're expecting to get interaction. So why wouldn't you answer questions if they're respectful questions, right? I don't tolerate people not being nice and respectful, but if you ask a respectful question, I'm gonna try to answer it if I can, and if I can't, I'll tell you. Oh, thank you for the hydrate. Sorry, I didn't see that. Yeah, it's like if you didn't want questions, then just post your stuff to YouTube, right? Like, and then don't pay attention to the comments. If you're going to be on Twitch, I think you should expect a level of interaction. And if you want viewers, then you should be nice to them. Oh, no worries, Freedom. Jungle Uncle says, how fast can you highlight and Control C and Control V? Yeah, and that's a big part of it too. A lot of the times in my day job at work, I find myself doing a fair amount of Control C, Control V. But the important thing is that you know what to Control C and Control V, right? Like, that's where the skill comes in. You know where to find what you want, and then exactly what to Control C, Control V. Yeah, and there's a lot of different sites out there that can help you up your words per minute if that's something you want to do. Um, the faster I can type, the more I can get done, or the less time it takes to get what I need to get done. Yeah, that's fair. Third Decade says, in my opinion, Q&A is a huge incentive and learning tool during the stream. Absolutely. And I mean, what I've found is that people ask really good, insightful questions, and then sometimes I'm like, oh wow, I didn't think about it that way, or oh crud, I didn't know that, or or man, that's something I need to look up later. Like, it helps me identify gaps in my own knowledge too. I don't come on stream expecting to be like some omnipotent coding god, because I'm very much not. I'm winging it most of the time, and so questions help me identify gaps in my knowledge, or things that maybe I didn't explain well. Dr. Moto says, most of the time thinking is going to limit your speed rather than typing, isn't it? Yeah, sometimes you got to stop and think for a minute. Sure. Um, so, I mean, that's really all I wanted to do today. We've already gone over time, but I hope this was helpful in seeing how we can quickly generate a project, a pretty full featured project using Vite, and then actually apply TypeScript to do a real thing, right? And then to, essentially have it working out of the box, right? We didn't really have to do much setup. Vite did that for us. And then all we needed to do was add in our logic, and we were able to see it live right here in the browser. So I would highly suggest Vite as a very effective tool for your project development if you decide to start using TypeScript. It does a lot of the grunt work for you, sets it up, and then you can explore some of the additional settings in your tsconfig file if you want to, or you can leave things as is. And you could try flipping some of these on and off and see what happens. But really, I mean, your project is good to go, and you can check out if you do want to deploy your project to production after you're done developing. You can use the build command, look at the docs, and see your build options, and roll it out for realsies. Oh, and the last thing I wanted to show you. So one thing you may not have noticed while you're looking at your file structure. So we have our source right here, right? But if you look inside, the rest of these folders, what you don't see is the output JavaScript file. So how do we see that? If we want to see the actual JavaScript that we're generating, in order to see that, we're going to have to actually look in the browser itself. So that's where we can see what's being generated. I think somewhere, maybe. I don't remember. I know you can see it in Snowpack, but maybe not in Vite. That's still TypeScript. In Snowpack, you can actually see it, but maybe you can't here. Maybe I'd have to deploy it first. Might have to do a deploy. I'm adding CSS first. I know you two don't get along. Yeah, no, I don't. Well, we can try. We can try running the build command and just see what happens. I'm curious. Let's wing it. We're going off the main track here. So let's see. What's my build command? If I look at my package.json, my build command is gonna be I think it's gonna be npm run build. Boop, 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 boop. Yeah, there we go. Okay, as soon as I did that, yeah. So once I ran npm run build, it created my dist folder, or my output folder. And when I did that, it actually formally generated the JavaScript. Now, it looks gross, right? It looks gross, but that is our JavaScript. So now let's see. I wonder if I do, I bet I could do, I'm going to try doing node, what is this? Can I copy the name? I'm just messing around now. Node index, what is this? Oh, hey, stop. What are you doing? All right, node index -5 to C47 ece.js. What is this going to do? No, it doesn't like that. Yeah, if I can't just run, oh, that's right, because we're doing an import. So I wonder if I do, let's try this. I'm going to try a live server on it. No, it tried to do it at the top level. Oh, wait, it worked. Nice. Haha, cool. All right. So it was able to run live server once I generated the JavaScript. Neato. I just wanted to try that out and see where that JavaScript was being generated. So it compiles in compact form, but it is working. So cool. Okay. I think that's really all I wanted to talk about today. Once again, I came in like almost so close to time. I'm very proud of myself. But yeah, if you are, still unsure about the fundamentals of TypeScript, go back to last week's stream and check that out. I'm also going to be moving some more stuff to YouTube here pretty soon. Another batch of like, 2 or 3 weeks worth of videos over to YouTube. And then the very last thing I wanted to show you, this is purely for my own amusement. So I do most of my notes in Notepad++. So like this is the script I'm following to build our projects. Most of them you can see all my past notes here, carefully labeled as new 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 because I'm organized like that. But yeah, I use Notepad++ to organize my stuff. And one of the features of Notepad++ is that you can highlight something and then like change its case, right? So like I can do uppercase, lowercase. You can convert, big chunks of text and change their case. You can even change it to like sentence case. So if something's like all uppercase, you want it to be a sentence form. You can have it be, sentence case, all these things. But today I discovered that for some reason you can convert things to random case. I don't know why, but it's essentially the SpongeBob meme. Check it out. Why does that exist? Give me one valid reason why that is a literal feature. Because I don't know, but I love it. It's the best thing I've ever seen. But why does it exist? For SpongeBob memes, obviously. Yeah, that's the only thing I can think of. It's a legitimate feature. Yeah, I can take any phrase and convert it to random case. So if you're using Notepad++, be aware you can now generate SpongeBob memes faster than ever before by simply choosing random case. Dr. Moda says it's probably for testing inputs in different cases. Yeah, that's probably true. So take that. Yeah, right. Now, my opinion has completely changed. Notepad++ is now my go-to editor just because random case is a thing. I just had to share that because it's the best thing I've ever seen. A programmer got bored. Yeah, probably. That's one of those 3 a.m. ideas. Yeah, and let me make sure. Did I push? Let's see, I'm going to delete my my build directory here. Just going to get rid of that. Oh, going to make me provide administration. Oh, I need to close this first. Right there. Try that again. Ugh. All right, I'll just delete it. Okay, so I'm going to make sure I did a push here. All right. Oops. -m final. There we go. Okay, nothing to commit. Good, we're good. Okay, so the repo should be up to date. If you want to try this for yourself, what I would suggest is if you want to run this for yourself and you just want to pull it down from GitHub, what I would do is go into the repo. So start your Vite project first, and then just go into the repo and like go into the individual files and copy the HTML and then copy the TypeScript. Rascal says, so what have you done today, Mikey? Oh, darn. I added a new case conversion target for the user. Yeah, random case. But yeah, Dr. Moto, that's actually a great explanation that you had. It's probably to test random inputs into programs, but it's still, that still seems like a pretty edge case to have a specific, conversion for it. But what do I know? It's not like I'm a developer or anything. And then also too, finally, I want to give one last shout out to the to the originator of this tutorial, which is Web Dev Simplified. So credit where credit's due. Check them out if you have the time. However, remember if you're following their tutorial, they're using Webpack instead of Vite, so you might want to make that conversion. All right, that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you for tuning in. Any questions before we wrap up? Mavi says, to be fair, I'm building Jira and I don't know why either. Ladro says, will there be a README explaining how to install Vite? Yes, I can add that to the repo with the commands. Good call. So add my README here, and I'll just drop those in. There we go. Install Vite. Oops. That's how you do it. Those are the commands. And we've got our import. And then also, so after importing UUID, install custom types. Let's see, so we'll do install UUID. Oops, can't spell. Install UUID, so we'll do it that way. CD, I'm gonna say CD into your project folder. Install UUID, and then install the custom types. And that should be all you need to get up and running. There you go. Oh, it didn't save my formatting. Yuck. Change that to that. That works. Why does it hate me? Do I have to add break tags or something? Somebody who's familiar, somebody who's good at READMEs. How do I do that? Do I have to add tags? I'm not good at Markdown. Yeah, BRs. Okay, that's good. Boop, boop, boop. All right, now it doesn't look pretty, but it'll work. Or 2 enters. Okay, that makes sense. Well, I already added all the break tags, so that's what you get. Oh, Seku says, you don't need to install an npm package for UUIDs. It's already given in JavaScript. Oh, nice. Thank you, Seku. I am going to leave the installation in there just because I want to illustrate the support. So the bundler allows for support for importing and exporting things like that. And so, that's why we're using a bundler here. So I'm going to leave it, but that's good to know that it already has native support for UUIDs. Bricktoad go brr. Okay, yes, thank you for the reminder about the README. That's hopefully helpful for folks as they are accessing this later. So, yeah, thank you, Siku. Appreciate the knowledge. Well, the so why did we get the error? I'm not sure what error you're referring to, Latjor. Um, which error are you talking about? Are you talking about why was UUID underlined? That was because we installed UUID, but it didn't have any types built into the package itself. And so what we did is we had to go out and look for types that were associated with that and install them manually. So TypeScript couldn't. It was looking at that, and I was like, it's like I see you installed this, but it doesn't have any types. I don't know what this is. TypeScript was just trying to tell us that it didn't know what it was looking at. And so what we were able to do is go out there and just find types for it and install those ourselves. And if you ever encounter that with another package, you can use that at types command, at like this, at types, and then slash whatever your package is. And that should go out and try to find types for whatever it is you installed if they aren't already built in. And hopefully they exist. They may not always exist, but hopefully they do and you can find them. Yeah. So, yeah, I appreciate you asking that question. That's good to clarify. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Oh, Seiko says crypto.random UUID in JS is the method to use. Good. Okay. Oh, and Rascal says if you go to the NPM page, it shows an icon if the package has built in types or has at types slash whatever installable types. So that's good to know. Yeah, so there is a reference for that if you've installed a package and TypeScript is yelling at you because it can't find what it needs. You can go to the NPM page, look in there and see, all right, where's my package? Does it have types that I can find using the at types command? And then install those the way we did today. So hopefully you might want to keep track of that command so you can use it later. And then also, as Rascal mentioned, head over to npm, look at the package lists, and see if it's there. Good call out. Appreciate that. Oh, and I appreciate the examples there, Rascal, as well. So for Mongoose, um, Mongoose has ts equals installable, and UUID shows that it has so I assume so. What you mean there is that Mongoose has it built in, so when you install it, it's gonna come with. And then something like UUID, as we saw, means that you can install those separately if you want them. Ah, got you. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. That's helpful to have those examples as well. So for those of you watching later on YouTube, that site is npmjs.com/package/mongoose is the page for mongoose, and then npmjs.com/package/UUID for the other example. All right. Excellent knowledge drops here at the end of the stream. I love it. We never slow down. All right. Well, how about we look and see if we can find someone to raid? I'm thinking that what we might do next week is something of a, kind of change topics again. I'm debating on what to do. I'm thinking maybe something with React. We've done a little bit with React on stream here. We a couple weeks ago we generated a React app using nothing but Chat GPT, which was pretty freaking fun. Um, oh, Coding with Strangers is on. Holy cannoli! Let's hit them up before they disappear. But yeah, I'm thinking about what to do next week. So feel free to message me if you have suggestions. But oh, yes, Coding with Strangers is on. They are so much fun. Please don't drop off. They are great. Let's send them some love. Starting the raid right now. Don't want to lose them. Let's go. I will see you all next weekend. Let's go. Colin Loretz, stick around for the raid, my friend. Here we go.